Welcome back, everyone. I don't know if everybody out there was expecting it. I know I was, at least. This is going to be going on forever because I don't know about my co host, but I do plan on living forever. We're back with the Face Your Fears podcast, episode 2. We're talking about phobies, and with the introduction of the 1.10 patch, there is a lot to talk about. So, how you doing there, co host?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back on, Chomp. My name's Karst. I am the lead mentor of the Phobies Mentor Program on Discord. We're a group of people, the mentors, who help new players
Wait,
acclimate to the
mentors
game.
or dementors? It sounded like you maybe had a Freudian
The
slip
mentors.
there.
Some of us might be, yeah, we might wreck your brain. So we
Yeah, just
might
a
be
little
the
bit.
mentors unintentionally,
Yeah,
but we try to well, I can't even say we try to keep it light because I can't say it's true for myself all the time, but
yeah.
we
Fair.
try to help people understand the game. And Phobies is a tough game to play.
100%.
It's very unforgiving, and I think it's good to have a team of us out there to help people learn how things are going. So stop by the Discord chat for Phobies and say hi to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as Karst mentioned, being part of the mentor program, I of course have to let everybody know here at the beginning, I'm part of the content affiliate program. That's part of the reason why we're doing this. Phobies does give me coffee for doing all this stuff. Just getting the disclaimer out there, just in case anybody cares about that stuff. But it's important for context. And also for my next statement, which is, I don't remember if we said this last time, but I do want to give a quick shout out to the Phobies team for putting together the mentorship program because, as you pointed out, Cars, Phobies is not an easy game to get into. Or I think it
Mhm.
is, but then you very quickly hit that stage of, oh my God, there's just the depth on the game is incredible. And you can very quickly, it's like being in the ocean, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I can't see the bottom anymore. And it gets very deep very fast. So I'm glad that they introduced this program, that you guys are putting in the work that you are.
Yeah, shout outs especially to Nico Ray for that. She really advocated for the program to come into existence. So grateful that she advocates for the community so much and helps us get things to improve the game in that way in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, just wanted to get that out there because I think that it was, I don't remember if we said it last time. So, and even if we did, it bears repeating because with a game that is this complex or this deep, and it's both because those are two distinct concepts, and we can probably get into that at
Yes.
some point. But uh, it's important to have these options available for newer players. And I would love if, and I've said this about many things, but I would love if they would put something in the game as, we have a million other pop ups. What's one more that says, hey, if you want to connect with other people, come join the Discord because it is buried in the options menu or the settings menu, whatever it's called. And
Yeah, it is.
it's out of the way.
It's even really. I think I suggested it once before. They didn't do it, but maybe I'll throw the suggestion out there again. There was another game I played called Rush Royale. I think it was
Hmm.
for. I just did it for offer wall stuff, and just like many games, it has premium currency and common
Of
currency,
course.
and in the main menu, there was a list of social media websites, and for each one you clicked on and visited the first time, you got like 5 premium currency. And I think Phobies likes to spread a lot of its information through the through Instagram, through
Yes.
Facebook. They have YouTube, they have the Discord. I don't know what else they have, but I feel like it'd be worthwhile for them to take the development time to have a little list that just gives you 10 coffee for every link you click on the first time, and it'll get people to join the Discord, and it'll get people to check on the Instagram and see what's going on there, and they'll reach more
Absolutely.
people because right now I
Hmm.
think a lot of people don't know.
That's absolutely true. And the biggest thing, I know we're already creating another topic on what's already an extensive topic list, but this is something that's important. And I think we could do an entire show about that. The biggest problem with Phobies is getting more people to play. And that's not, oh my God, it's Phobies is dying, the sky is falling. That's true of literally every game, even the successful ones. You need to continue growing or otherwise you're dying. It's kind of a famous saying. And in this case, if people don't know that these other things exist, like, I'm not an Instagram person. I had no idea there was a Phobies Instagram until one of the contests rolled around. And I only knew about that because I was in the Phobies Discord, which I do use. Like, I use Discord besides for the Phobies. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, I was able to eventually find these other things, but if somebody is not actively looking, the only place that every person who plays Phobies goes to is the game client. So that has to be the number one landing spot or jumping off point, as this is probably more appropriate for this, for everything. It has to be in there for people to see it and to know it, or otherwise they're probably going to miss it. Most likely they're going to whiff.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I also I don't have an Instagram account or
Mhm.
anything like that, you know. So
I only think about having it for personally for posting toy pictures, but that's a wildly different discussion. And I haven't made the plunge yet because I hate Facebook and Zuckerberg, and he's probably leeching all my information anyway from everything else. So I don't feel like giving it to him
I
directly. Make him work for it.
I have a Facebook, and it was solely because my wife wanted to like mark me as her husband. So I said, "Oh, okay, I'll make an account, and that way you can label this other account as being your spouse." And that's
Yeah.
the extent I've used Facebook, pretty much.
Well, they've got you now. It's too late. You'd never
Yeah, they have all
escape
my
now.
yeah, they
But
have all my info.
yeah, we can, like I said, make an entire episode of that. So let's move into what the actual topic is for, or topics plural, for this evening.
But
All right, so our alternate overlay here. It's a work in progress, folks. Everybody watching, following along at home. You can either listen to the soothing, dulcet tones of our voices, or feel free to follow the bouncing ball here with the rest of the class as we have some visual aids. So, of course, we're going to be talking about patch 1.10 or 1.10 or 1.10, however you want to look at it, the Rockin' Horrors patch, and kind of I was going to say fallout, but that makes it sound much more negative than I intended. But the ramifications, the ripples of this patch, because it was enormous.
yeah, I mean, are you talking about the balance part or other parts?
Well, all of it, to be honest. I think every patch, just the introduction of new phobies and new maps, especially the
Yeah,
new maps, changes things up significantly, just because of, well, you zone into some of these maps and it clearly influences your choices and options.
yeah, definitely.
And we're going to get to that towards the end of this. So the general game plan for everybody at home is, first we're going to talk about general thoughts about the patch, move into the balance changes, the phobies themselves, the maps, and then we'll see how much time we have at the end for potentially anything else. And again, as I mentioned earlier, anybody hanging out in Twitch chat, feel free to throw questions out there so that we can either answer them live or we'll circle back to them at the end. So, Karst, when you first saw I'll call it the teaser, we got the link to the Phobies forums, another piece of social media that I feel is often neglected, that doesn't get brought up that much, but there was a link to the patch notes and the balance changes, had the brief snippets, so we didn't get the full scope of the Phobies. But even branching into when we finally did get the patch and got the Phobies, our first look at the new maps, that sort of thing. How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, or what were your first impressions of the patch overall?
So, pros and cons. I was
Uh-oh.
generally
That was
pretty.
a long sigh.
I was just well. The question is, what was my first reaction? My first
Yeah.
reaction, I think, was I saw a tractor increase ability cooldown from 1 to 2, and I just like let out an F bomb and said, "That's it." Like that's not to increase the tractor's cooldown from 1 to 2 is almost to me not understanding what the attractor problem is in a
I think we're going to
sense.
circle
And
back to
this,
that one. Not just a tractor, but there's a couple of balance changes that are in the same boat, I think. But continue.
yeah. The new phobies I think are are pretty much all playable
Yeah.
except for Whiskers. I think on your like hot take
Yeah.
stream, you said Whiskers is terrible, and that's my take too. I don't
It
see
just,
how this thing with 850 health is
yeah.
gonna be usable.
I think playable
Um,
might be stretching it on some of them, but we'll also get into that. So keep going.
and the maps I'm mostly happy with.
Mhm.
I spent like a whole week angry
Really?
at Toys in the Attic.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh,
I was like, what, Matt? And honest to God, it slipped out of my mind. I
I just
totally
the
blacked.
second I
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was just say I blacked that one out. That's why I was so surprised. I'm like, what map could he be upset about? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I saw it, and I'm someone who I try to judge things generously when I
Mm,
come to, I come from a philosophy background, and one of the rules is if you really want to understand a philosopher, you can't read what they're saying with a critical eye. You have to accept their argument, embrace it, and then you can pick it apart once you fully understand where they're coming from. And so when I see a new map, I try to look at it and think, okay, cool. What's the potential here?
yeah.
And and to me, like Toys in the Attic, it made me so frustrated because it's one, I think it's a candidate for the worst map in the game. I think it's
Really?
without a doubt one of the worst maps they've ever made.
Okay.
And I think it's just frustrating that we are 2 years in and their small map design philosophy is still here's one contestable panic point for you to trade one key's forth back and forth on for some reason.
Hmm.
And the community has been vocal about maps we don't like. I started a suggestion that was just blatantly. I said, let me scroll to it real quick.
Sure.
I said,
I mean, I generally agree with you, and again, we'll touch on this when we hit the actual map discussion piece. But I was initially higher on Toys in the Attic, I think, than you were, but it does feel a little stale at this point of like, we can't possibly have used every idea yet for small maps. And it feels like we're going back to the well on certain concepts way more than we need to.
I think like okay, so the suggestion I wrote was
Yeah,
please
go
stop
ahead.
making maps with the one contestable panic point. It's not fun to fight over a single strategic position. Also, please stop making maps mostly covered in poison tiles. It is not fun playing matches where we cannot use most of our collections, pushing both players to heavily use mechs. Toys in the Attic is the latest culprit of this, but Locker Room Funk has the same problem. And it has, last time we did this, one thing you mentioned was, what about the people who don't think like us? What do you say to them?
Yeah.
And I was surprised because sometimes my map opinions are a little controversial, but it got 55 upvotes and 3 downvotes.
Mm. I think there
That's
is
including
a
the automatic.
good, good. Yeah, sorry, I was cutting you off.
That's including the automatic 1 downvote from the bot. So really, 2
Oh
people
yeah.
in the entire Discord disagreed.
Yeah. I do think there's a level of self-selection with Discord polls in general, or
Mm-hmm.
anything like, and I know you knew that. I'm pointing this out more for, the lay person following along at
Yep.
home, that anytime we're by being in the Phobies Discord, for example, you're already a small percentage of a small percentage in engaging with
Yeah.
the game. And and I always say this about Twitch chat, that, hey, you're here actively watching a podcast about Phobies being recorded. By definition, you are the 0.1% of the Phobies population. Even because even among the people that will watch and listen to this, of which there are several hundreds or hopefully thousands and tens of thousands, which, you will contain my delusions of grandeur. But if we, even among and I know there will probably be several hundred people that will watch this later, listen to this later. The people on the stream are by definition a much smaller number and smaller percentage than the people who watch it afterwards. And it's the same sort of principle for anything like this. However, I think it is important to note that among those people, among your, by definition, most engaged people, that it's kind of an overwhelming response. It's not,
Yeah,
there was no contest here, seemingly, or virtually no contest.
I agree. Um, Another part of it, I think, was some people in the community made that rather convincing leak with the music note.
Mm-hmm.
And Instagram had a post that said, "Look forward to some exciting changes to Phobies," and so imaginations were running wild. And it's been a long time since Phobies has gotten anything besides new maps and new Phobies. And
Yeah.
I think the last big thing was about a little over 1 year ago. We got events added into the game,
I would,
and I think
good, good.
and just I feel like it's overdue for us to get something more.
While I agree, I think it would be selling the game short to say like the introduction of the new tiles and new mechanics isn't something that would qualify as new and exciting. And maybe that's me being the cynic on the marketing end of things. When I see any company, this is not just Smoking Gun, this is not just Phobies, it's if I see a statement by an organization and they say, wait for the new and exciting thing, like, look, you're just putting something out for me to buy. It's going to be a new thing for me to buy, or it's going to be a minor change. I don't think we will get, I don't want to say never. I don't want to make this a never statement, but I don't expect that we will get something earth shattering that is a dramatic change to the existing systems. We've often heard from the team, and this is all public stuff for anybody out there, if you comb through the Discord primarily, a lot of the statements are, well, hey, why can't we get this? Why doesn't the team do that? Why don't you introduce this? And the common refrain is the team is small, which is true. And for that reason, among others, I don't, to be honest, when you said events, I wouldn't have put events in like the big change category, although I guess it is. I don't know. I kind of lost where I was going with this. I started out with, I feel like we're selling them short, but it's just, I don't,
Okay.
I guess where people got, yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned tiles as new content, and,
Yes.
and they are, but I think that's good, and it's fun. Conveyor tiles, I think, are amazing. I think most of the community loves conveyor tiles and the additional level of depth and strategy they add to the maps that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Poison tiles, I think, have been a hit or miss.
I do have an update for that for poison tiles, but we'll finish your thought and then I'll let you know.
Yeah. I agree. It's fair to call that content. I think, but there are a lot of things I think that the community's been waiting on. It's been a long time waiting for a quest rework, for tier cat removal, for a pity system, season pack improvements, and I wasn't expecting some like major new like 2v2 mode, but there's a part of me that's really kind of waiting and hoping for, come on, when we gonna get some changes to the game's problems.
I would have, if somebody had asked me, because I had this thought, if somebody had asked me pre-patch, will we be getting one of those? I would have said no. But then when they make that statement, and although I said I was trying to be cynical about we're going to get new stuff. Well, one of those things would be fine for me. And I would, because I've been in other communities for other games where basically the identical pattern has happened. Game comes out, everybody loves it. Then they realize, oh, hey, here are the things I'd like to fix. It's a small team, so it takes quote unquote forever to fix. Then it finally does get fixed, but they roll out one of 30 things because the community's been whining forever. And everybody complains, well, how come we didn't get everything else? And I usually go to bat for them, like whoever the devs are, because it's like, look, it's not, you can't just snap your fingers and it exists. There's a reason why it takes time, and there's dev time and all this stuff. So we got something. They are doing what we asked. And it's usually, what are you complaining about? Like, yes, we want it faster. We want more, but let's be reasonable. And I would have liked to have seen any of the quality of life things that people have been asking for. But at this point, I'll be honest, I would kind of expect they're not happening. Like either they can't or they won't at this point. And either one means they're not going to exist.
I feel like, I don't know, I'm someone who just never stops, so I can't accept that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Oh, I'm not saying don't stop asking. The thing is I don't want people, there's a difference between the way like you do it, and there are other people that do it the same way that you do, Cars, where it's respectful and it's, hey, we need these things. The community needs these things, because people that aren't as invested are just going to leave. They're going to stop playing because, hey, I've opened 80,000 Dreadfuls and I still don't have blah. And they get upset. And I understand that. So introduce a pity timer and those people maybe won't disappear and they'll keep spending money. They'll keep playing the game. But the other part of me says I'm not going to get my hopes up every time that I see something. I'm not going to get upset.
No, and I am particularly foolish about this. So I'm self-aware in that I am just not good when it comes to we've got a big surprise for you. I don't like surprises because I inevitably overhype myself and disappoint myself. So
Now, you got to
I'm
be a
fully to
cynic like
blame
me and
for that.
just assume nothing good ever happens.
I have tried so hard, I really have. But I'm just bad at
Don't
it.
worry, I'll drag you down, Carson. I'll drag you down. Down here with me. No, I hear what you're saying though. Like, I do want to be hopeful, and this is I hope people don't take this as a downer. It's just I'm trying to be realistic. It's been over 2 years.
Mhm.
The pity system, and I'm gonna harp on that one because like it's an easy thing to point at. I don't know what it takes. I've done coding before. I've done game development before, not for digital game, physical games, but like I've been involved and around these things for over 30 years. I still don't know what goes on behind Smoking Guns doors, and anybody who says they do is lying. So I don't know what it would involve to get this in play, but there is no reality in which they were not aware of it even before Phobies was announced, let alone launched. Like this system existed for at least a decade, kind of thing. So if they didn't do it at launch and people have been pleading for it and they still haven't done it, there's a point where I'm thinking just, like I said, they can't or they won't. And I don't know which it is, but we're in the same spot regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that other than a sigh and a yeah.
And I do think people should keep asking for it because once people stop asking, then it's very easy for them to quote unquote forget. But just temper your expectations, everybody out there. Like don't expect them for it to show up tomorrow, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think like the pity timer, that's a big one. But
Mm-hmm.
the number one I want to see is just the removal of the tier cap, and I feel like it gets perceived as well. Of
That's
course, you
another
want the
one.
tier cap to go away. You want more phobies, and you want more stuff to come in. But that's not it for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've recorded my last. I've recorded over 1 million tiers worth of pack openings for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and in all that time, I have gotten 0 ultra rares and 1 rare.
Sounds
So
like there's a
am I
larger problem that might be at stake that we may have lined up for another topic.
So
There
I
could
said
be a,
the tier cap removal doesn't help me.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
get anything from it except for some extra dupes.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the new players. It's to help them stick around because I think the number one problem Phobies has is that it's like going on a date. You download a game, and on your first date, if the person you're going on the date with says, "Hey, by the way, can you help me with rent?" You're gonna be like, "Whoa, that's a big jump in
Yeah.
obligation, and I'm not ready for that."
Yeah.
And Phobies, on its first day that you play it, says, "Hey, did you like playing your first day? Spend $10 on
Yeah.
the subscription so you can keep playing."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just like that would scare me away from a date. I think that scares so many people away from playing Phobies for a second day. And I think there's a fundamental problem with a game that discourages you from playing it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially now. Like that was a very well, I guess it still is a common thing. There's tons of games that still do things similar to that, but it has kind of gone the way of the dodo for many games, mobile games specifically, over time. And systems like that just feel kind of archaic in the context of the
Yes.
modern gaming landscape. So I've made hypothesize about why they exist. I have no idea if they're true, but I can't come up with a good justification for why they're here.
What I've tried to suggest in the past, and I wish that they would try, is I've said, why don't you just make an event? 1 month the tier cap is gone. Do it as part of a release celebration, like the 1 month event. For this month, the
Hmm.
tier cap is gone. And then
I think
look
that's
at
a good
your
idea.
financial metrics. And if the financial metrics don't match up, if this was bad for the game and bad for the game's revenue, then okay, it comes back at the end of the month. No one's upset because it was part of the event. And if I'm right and it was good for the game's finances, then you can do a big announcement that makes everyone happy and is good for the game. It's like a win-win.
I think that's actually a great idea. I think that would be an excellent idea. But that's one of those that I like so many other suggestions kind of goes into the black box for Smoking Gun, and maybe we'll hear about it later. Maybe we won't. Um, Hopefully we will, because I actually like that idea a lot. I don't think we've talked about that one before. Um, but I'm glad that now it's out there for people to hopefully more eyes and ears, and hopefully other people will raise their voices as well. Despite me saying that, don't expect anything. Hopefully, people don't take that as shut up and go away.
Hope for the best, expect the worst, right?
Pretty much the story of my life. But let's circle back to the patch since we kind of went off on a tangent. So I asked about the initial thoughts, but now that you've had some time to mess around with the patch, the phobies, the new maps, we now have our second set of new maps, the balance changes, everything. Do you still feel that your initial emotions, initial assessments are accurate? Do you feel like anything has changed since then?
I don't think so, really. I think the first take was like pretty much accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't tell me like what was your first reaction to everything.
I
I got
so
to
oh, what was that?
I was gonna say I got to ramble on about my opinions. Your turn.
Yeah, so okay, so phobies wise, excuse me, you started with balance. So let's start with balance. There were a number of things that changed, and I said as much in the videos that I had done before that I'm still kind of almost literally scratching my head on, but why? Like I literally don't understand these changes. They don't make sense. Other than that, there were other ones like the collector change, for example, I think was great. We'll have to see how that
Yes,
one pans out. Good.
as a collector owner, I was very happy to see movement increase from 1 to 2. I have used him a couple of times since then,
Mhm.
and he definitely doesn't feel overpowered. I can say that.
Yeah. I mean, at 8 keys, it better damn well be powerful. And I think inherently being a melee phobie, it's just I joked about this on other streams, but in general for balance, I feel like virtually every melee phobie could get plus 100 damage, plus 100 health, maybe even more than that, and they're all mostly going to be fine. There's a ton of
Yep.
them that could just blanket get bigger numbers, and I don't even know if it would make that much of an impact in a lot of cases. But whatever is being scored for the cost economy of designing phobies is really kicking melee phobies for the most part in the nuts way harder than it needs to be. So overall for balance wise, I guess I was very disappointed about maybe not very disappointed about the attractor change. But I kind of agree that the fundamental issue with attractor is the first pull most of the time. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, cooldown change doesn't affect the first pull because the game ends on the first pull, but I had to kind of reel it back in of, is that for the best players only? And like how many people are just, oops, I'm marching my attractor right into their death machine. So I don't know if
Jeremy
like
loves to do these screenshots
uh
where people use a tractor against him and they do a pull that
uh
doesn't kill anything
oh
and
god.
gets their tractor killed. And I'm just like, why? Why are you doing this to
This is why the
yourself?
win rate. But you know what? No, we'll save that for the balance discussion. We're getting into that soon. So the balance was that the new phobies for the most part, I like them. I think I was down on more of them than you were. I think the only one that we might, and I wouldn't even say really disagree on, is Benny, because and it's going to be a while before we can see Benny really pan out because it is a numbers based phobie. But I just don't know, for example, how difficult it's going to be to just send a random 1 key in or snowball to run in and run out and step on that guy when his baseline health is already so comparatively so low. But
Yeah.
even then, like I want to try him. I'm willing to give him a whirl. Some of the other ones, like, is it Ace or Ash is the fish tank? It's Ace,
Ace.
right? Like that
Yeah.
one is, I don't know why that one exists. Like,
Okay.
I don't
So
know.
Ace, I mean, I think it's questionable to put him into the game at this point. Like, okay,
Mm,
here's how I feel. So the previous set that we got Chevelle and we got Phantom, and they're both overpowered at launch, but they were exciting,
yeah.
and people could not stop talking about them. And what a concept, and they're very contentious. And then we got this update, and we didn't get anything new and exciting mechanics wise. It's just reflavors of other things we already have, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Um,
Especially in light of like Ash could have been mind blowing, and then it's like, well, we already got Shove Shark and Phantom, so like,
Yeah, exactly. So
why are you
Ash
here?
is like it's just it's a Shove Shark variant in a sense,
Yeah,
and Ace is a stat stick melee phobie, which not saying he's bad, but we don't need a stat stick melee phobie. We have plenty of stat stick melee phobies
yeah,
already that we can't use.
yeah. Although I will say, chat's pointing out Skinwalker. Don't worry, we didn't forget about him. We will be talking about
Yep.
that guy. That guy, I will say, that guy's exciting for a variety of reasons. But
One thing I will say in Ace's
yeah,
defense is that I don't know. Anytime something with huge damage comes through, I go through and I look through what it can one shot. Ace can one shot Oopsie Baby,
I
and
that will happen. That 100% has happened already. I bet that's happened already. But it's just like that's such a weird thing to happen. Like, who? How did you let that happen? Like,
yeah.
Oopsie Baby guy, what are you doing, baby? What is you doing? I don't know what you're doing, but you need a babysitter. You need to be a better babysitter. That baby got whomped. What are you doing? You're gonna get your license pulled. I don't know if there's licenses.
Well, and that's like the story with people who spam 3 range phobies is they just kind of like they often let them face tank,
Yeah,
instead of treating like Jar Cannon, and that's a whole other story
there
to get
there are
into.
some funny screenshots. But
Yeah.
okay,
Oh yeah.
so we got, what do? We did the balance. We did the new Phobies, the new maps. I am cautiously optimistic about a variety of the new maps. I think it's easier when we have the visual up and we can talk about them individually. And I did add Chapeltown in after you had gotten me that because I didn't take a screenshot of that. Sorry, guys. I didn't take a screenshot of that one when it was still in the rotation. I'm cautiously optimistic, but the one thing that I want to mention, we'll probably come back to this in the map discussion, is this is a hypothetical. We currently have disease tiles and poison tiles. We have conveyor tiles. We have abyss tiles. We have stims. We have panic points. We got, all this stuff. We don't, seemingly as always, because mechs are the best phobie type. We don't have a tile that cares about mechs. Now, the obvious thing is to say, let's have an electrical tile. So we have a counterpart to the poison and disease. It's somehow, I guess it wouldn't impact any non-mech phobie, but it would deal damage to mech phobies, similar to the way that at the end of the turn, you take some amount of damage if you're a mech. My thought was, why don't we repurpose some of the existing mechanics and make fire more damaging to mechs? So that it melts the metal. So the lava tiles will do baseline 200 to any phobie. It does 300 to mechs or something like that. It was something I had.
I think it.
Oh, good.
It'd be fun to mess with those things, but I think, like you said, they're disinclined to change mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you change mechanics, people come back and are just like, "Whoa, why did this happen?"
100%. People will quit the game over it.
Angry.
Absolutely.
I do have a new tile idea I thought of recently in reflection of what you were saying.
And what's that?
I call it the puddle tile.
Okay.
And the idea is, if something is standing on a puddle tile, it will take electricity damage, whether it's a mech or not. If it is a mech, it will take double electricity damage. And fire cannot spawn on puddle tiles. So you get some interesting interactions with freeze, perhaps, where you could have a freeze spot, maybe we could shove someone into, where they could not be defrosted. It also means that there could be maps where electricity phobies, which are pretty weak right now in general,
For the most part,
have a role in the meta, and we get to see them more. And then, of course, because of all this, it also means that there are maps and positions where mechs aren't really doing so great.
Yeah, that's kind of the main thing. And just to clarify on your idea before I bring up the emphasis, is that you're saying the tile itself is not doing the damage. It's just if you get hit by electrical damage, it then is either, non-mech takes damage and then boosted for mech.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just if you're standing on the tile.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the idea. And I think the emphasis piece of the discussion is mechs right now really have no meaningful weakness. Everything else gets some level of penalty, but mechs really don't. for the most part.
Right.
It was originally, and you can see this with Hevo 1.0, that it's clearly supposed to be, hey, they get higher HP, but they probably have lower damage. But even in Hevo's case, it's, well, you get a lob to make up for it. So are you really that much worse off than the somewhat comparable Crushmore and Klepto? If you compare Hevo to Stairmaster, it's just like, I mean, yeah, there's a big damage drop off, but there's a lot of other drop offs there too.
Yeah.
There's a couple, like dropping off a cliff. But yeah, it's tough with mechs because it does feel like they are the favorite child, so to speak. They definitely get the better end of the stick in almost every scenario.
Yep, definitely.
But it is what it is.
TVZ Furmaid said in chat, he said, is it just me or am I seeing Phantom less? I think you probably are seeing it less.
I think you should see it less, but...
Right. I still think it's ridiculously overpowered. But there's a trend in Phobies that I've noticed where if something gets nerfed, even if it's still really, really good, people just stop using it. Like they assume, oh, it got nerfed, it's not good anymore or something.
I think that is, and it... PVZ, I don't know offhand what rank you're at, but I think there is a level of what you're saying, Karst, in Phobies of, oh, those patch notes, this got nerfed, it must be bad, because that's kind of what happens in every other game. You know, something, it usually is extreme buffs or extreme nerfs and completely rearranges things. So, and given how much effort you have to put in strategy and tactics in Phobies, I could see where people who are not living and breathing it all the time jump to that conclusion. Like it seems like an easy thing. Yeah, so it definitely makes sense to me that is happening. But like you said, it's still a ridiculously powerful ability. I keep thinking back to when Beauty got nerfed, and then it had to get nerfed again, and then now you almost never see Beauty, which is strange because it's still a very powerful phobia, but other toys, I guess.
Boss too. My boss has vanished from the meta.
Oh, 100%.
It's funny because I still used it against both Hoploy and Karth this last month to pull off wins. And I think he's very usable. I don't think he's overpowered anymore. I think he's very well balanced. But it's funny how people would just completely drop these things, you know, if they get a nerf.
Well, I do wonder how many people... There's definitely going to be some number of people in this category where they go, I was barely getting by. It didn't need to get nerfed. Yeah, everyone is overselling it. And then now it's nerfed, so it has to be trash. But I don't think that's a significant portion of the people involved. So I do wonder if it's maybe coming at it from another angle. It's nerfed now, so now I'm freed. Now I can use all these other things. And it's like they didn't feel compelled to use the overpowered thing.
That's true. And also the spike, like kind of in that same tone, the spikes who feel like they want to win, they want to be on top of the ladder, so they're using the best meta stuff. It makes sense that they're going to start searching for, you know, Boss is strong still, he's very playable, but he's not meta. Right. And there are now other things that are meta that are better options than Boss. You know, I always felt like Hevo 3.0 was better than Boss, and people complained about Boss too much. But Hevo 3.0, now that Boss has gotten touched and Hevo 3.0 is untouched, I think Hevo 3.0 is just nuts, especially with Chevelle. 3.0 plus Chevelle, you're getting double taps of 100% AoE. If you have a well-constructed team, you have Gonzo out, you've practically double damage, double taps AoE. You can wipe entire teams with that kind of combo. And you can't do that with Boss.
It's significantly easier to do that with Shove Shark instead of, say, Gravedigger, because I was doing that with Gravedigger Hevo 3.0 for a long time, where you can get those double taps, but people kind of got wise to it. It's also, you got to position the Gravedigger. You may not be able to just drop a block. The straight up movement is just significantly easier to manage.
Yeah, definitely. Hevo 3.0 comes with other benefits too, right? He's a mech. Yeah. So you could use him on any map and you're happy to. And And also a great one is when you pair him with Gravedigger. Like I used to do Boss Gravedigger a lot.
Yeah.
But Boss kills Gravedigger with his ultimate, and 3.0 does not. He's a better buddy.
Yeah.
He cares about his friends.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to make that joke. I was like, this guy actually has friends and keeps them. Something along
Yeah,
those
exactly.
lines.
Boss just burns everything.
Yeah, he
down,
just doesn't
which is more
care.
my style.
Man, that guy
Yeah.
is a dick. But I think we beat the initial thoughts to death. So let's talk about the actual balance changes themselves. And we did touch on this before. I do have all of them loaded up. We can go through a variety of them. I just realized that I didn't have I have the attractor image, but not attractor. But for anybody who's unaware, attractor has a nerf to the cooldown and now takes an additional turn, 2 total for the cooldown. And you touched on it earlier, Karst, that you didn't feel this was appropriate, but more specifically that you feel it didn't address the core problem with attractor. So can you elaborate on that for people that maybe don't understand what is the problem?
Yeah, so okay, so first of all, I don't think it's bad that it got the ability to cool down to 2. My ideal attractor nerf is that its cooldown goes to 2, its lock goes to 2, and its health goes down to 750. And my main issue with attractor is that whether it's too strong or not, we know it was in the data now, thanks to Eric Cake sharing that with the community. You just can't kill this thing. You cannot approach a 3-range, 900 health phobie without coordinating, unless you use a high-value electricity phobie without using like 3 other phobies in coordination.
Yeah, I don't think it's not to cut you off, but like, is there pre health nerf? Is there any electrical phobia that would have one shot? I'm pretty sure there isn't. Not even Sparky will do it.
No, Sparky does 800. So you can pay 7 keys for Sparky, who is the highest damage electrical before we got Ace and Frosty. Frosty will one shot attraction because Frosty does 1,000 straight up.
Also 9 keys, but
yeah. Well, and not like that, but if you compare like Frosty to Sparky and Ace, Sparky, he's single target damage, whoop-de-doo. Ace, he's melee. Frosty, he can one-shot attractor and he can freeze a whole line. That's a phobia that's worth picking to counter attractor, because after the attractor counter, there's gold to be mined there still, right?
Exactly.
The fact that Sparky, like, why would I'm not saying Sparky, I think Sparky is pretty playable right now, but I'm not going to use him against Attractor because he can't kill Attractor, you know? And
of course,
it's the general issue. I would say this. Often you say that 3-range phobias are a mistake. And I think to some degree that's true. I assume when you say that you don't mean Jar Cannon. Am I right?
Yeah, like the original 3 Rangers, and I include Snowball in this. I think the issue is both the quantity and the rolls. So Jar is, for example, just to elaborate on it, Jar is the low end. Obviously, everybody gets it. It's a lobber. It serves a bunch of rolls, but it's extremely low damage comparatively. It is intended to chip away at things or finish something off. Okay, that's fine. Snowball is very mobile and is only technically a damage dealer every other turn. All right, so we have a window of opportunity there. And it of course also serves as a counterpart to Jar. And there's a number of phobies that can snipe it on key cost level, which I think is important when as you pointed out, when we're talking about Attractor. Chuck is the other end where it's, okay, we have your long range bomb guy, but he's also somewhat fragile at the end of the day. Like, you can jump a Chuck. There are ways to get around
fragile it. That I didn't notice this until someone pointed out to me. Maybe it was either Dudio Bugtron or his Bean of Evil. One of them pointed out that Chuck has the same health as Unbearable. He has the health of
I never realized that's not a comparison that I ever made, but that's I mean, like,
so if you rush him, right? If you rush him, his range doesn't matter, and now he's a 4 key for 9 keys. And that to me is very balanced.
Exactly. I think that is a valid way to look at it because, okay, I have this problem phobia. I keep seeing this in games and I have no idea how to beat it. Well, what does it do well? It's very good from range. What does it do poorly? somebody standing on his dick. You can't get close to this guy. It's going to be bad, at least for the guy with Chuck. So, like, get on him and ruin his day.
Right.
Enter
And
a
the thing
tractor
that
where it's like, okay, I do that. Not only does it not die, and I did their job for them. Like, that is bad.
exactly. And the thing about Chuck is, even though Chuck has way more health than a tractor,
Yeah.
Chuck is like Jar Cannon in that if you want to do well with Chuck, if you want to do well with Jar Cannon, you need a team that supports their range,
Yeah.
protects them, and helps them abuse it. And a tractor's problem is it has so much health, it doesn't need support. It doesn't need help. It
It
can tank the
synergizes with
team.
it literally everything.
Exactly. It can tank the team with its face. And if you don't have the answer, I mean, something that is just depressing to see, I think, is when you're on a small map, a tractor is out, and you just click on it, and you see the red hexes pop up to see the area it covers, and you just realize that
It's the
here's this
whole map.
phobie. It's like, yeah, it's like 80% of the map. And because you can't attack it, and because it pulls, and when it pulls, it kills when it's played by a competent player, that means that what I have to do now is whatever I'm doing, I have to stop it. And my entire game now becomes about waiting for me to save up enough keys to play something to kill a tractor. And regardless of arguing whether it's too strong or not, to me, that's not a very fun experience to have to do that over and over again.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go. Like, as you were talking, one of the things I was thinking of is I kind of wish if we could go back in time, make a tractor a single target pole and make one of the existing single target poles a multi pole. Like one of the, like Miss Moffat is a multi pole or something like that.
Right.
The idea. What was that?
Yeah. I'm just laughing because there's a couple Crowley in the Discord. He
Mhm.
thinks that Moffat's really overpowered and complains about her a lot. So when you mentioned that, I just laughed at the
That's
imagined reaction he would
that.
have to
That's
Moffat
a
having
thought
a
I haven't
multiple.
seen yet, but okay, we'll go with that one. Um,
Uh,
yeah, I to go back to your point of what the root cause is here. So let's talk about the cooldown for a second, or the new cooldown. Like
yeah,
we talked about this offline a little bit, and I just want to make sure that we get this out to kind of hammer the point home. If the game or let me rephrase this: how often does the game not immediately end after the first attractor pull? Like, how many times is there still a game to be played, like a reasonable game to be played?
yeah. I mean, if you're playing your cards right with a tractor, that first pull is the last pull you need. You know,
Yeah,
you're glad to have more because why
yeah,
not?
they happen, of course, but
But you know, usually when I do a pull with a tractor, I'm looking to create something like a 3 or 4 key differential at least.
mhm.
And I think in high level play, once there's a 3 or 4 key difference, that's pretty much game. It's like in chess, you
Yeah.
know. You can hang a bishop or two at low level play, and whatever, maybe you'll still find the magic checkmate. But if a grandmaster hangs a bishop, they surrender. You know, the game's over.
Yeah, exactly. It's a deterministic game in both scenarios. I mean, of course, on ladder, you could have a level differential that might make things scarier than it should be. But realistically, because there is no variance, we're not playing a card game, it's not a dice game, there isn't some lady luck that'll intervene. It's just
Mhm.
numbers against numbers. And if suddenly you put yourself in the negative, you're in a bad spot. And I agree with you. The first poll is the biggest issue. I'm kind of in the 100% want to see a health nerf on this because I can kind of imagine when this was still a whiteboard idea that with its current health level that a tractor is, oh well, if somebody like you play a tractor, I'm going against it, I should have an electrical phobie and an AoE phobie. Therefore it's direct electrical hit plus splash equals dead attractor. That just doesn't happen. Like that's not a thing that really can
Yeah,
be engineered. And I
it's
just
not.
maybe it shouldn't be able to be one shot by any electrical, but I'm not sure that that's true either. Like I
Well, now
kind
even oops you can. right? Now Oopsie can be one shot by an electrical if you decide to invest in Ace and if you can land that lucky hit.
Hmm.
I think that's reasonable. I think you'd mentioned, okay, so
Yeah,
the initial point I was going with was Jar Cannon, good design.
yeah,
It's a 3-range Phobie. 3 range is extremely powerful. It's mobile. It has lob. But it pays for that by the fact that like 80% of the phobies can one-shot it, right?
yeah.
And so you need to be
And
very
on
careful.
level, like it's obvious that
Yes.
Murderwing, Cassowary, Snowball, and probably others that I can't think of right now are explicitly intended. Like, yeah, this goes and murders a jar cannon.
Yep.
What
And
what does that with a tractor? Goose egg. Like, there's nothing.
right, exactly. And that's their main issue is they're 3 range and you don't it's not like Jerkin. You don't have to protect these things.
Yeah.
And I think what they don't need I don't want them to be bad, but I think that it needs to be a criteria that if a phobia has 3 range, that it needs team support to function properly and perform well.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why wouldn't I always use 3 range over 2 range?
I mean, we're creating a new level of the melee problem because right now it's basically why would I ever use a melee phobia? And
Mm,
for the most part, you don't. Like, yeah, the ones
right,
that you use are like Cassowary because it's fake range, like
right.
those sort of things. Or for a while, Quagmire was everywhere, and it seems to have also notably dropped off the face of the earth. But that guy is enormously tanky and then heals himself. So it's like I go in, I take a beating, I run away, and eventually I'll come back. But you need something exceptional to justify being melee. And we're creating the problem again with 3 rangers, like these 3 rangers specifically.
Yep, I agree.
So
And I think the whole community knows it too. Like
yeah,
when you talk about 3 range phobies with the community, yeah, you'll get some people complain about Chuck, but the community will overwhelmingly say, no, 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 you just gotta learn how to deal with it. Oopsie baby, people are fine with. Jar Cannon, people are fine with. But if you bring up the Sentinels, people are grabbing their pitchforks at these things. So
can't blame
why
them.
is it that the 3 rangers that are lower in keys than them and the phobias that are higher keys than them, people are generally fine with? But there's this middle section that people are angry about. It just has to be a balance thing.
Now, I will say 2/3 of the Sentinels are attached to incredibly powerful abilities. Displacement things are the most powerful things or displacement abilities are the most powerful things you can do in a game like Phobies. You are
Yeah.
dictating to your opponent like half their actions because you're changing what they did essentially. Compared to the other 3 rangers and Oculus, they air quotes just do damage. Attractor and Repeller are absolutely on another level, but Inoculus is just a numbers thing. Like there has to be an equilibrium of numbers for Inoculus. Repeller and Attractor, I do wonder, are we going to get to the point where, okay, we've played with the numbers all that we can. They can no longer be AoE hits. They have to just be whatever,
I
like
think
single target.
part of that is the lock.
Mm,
I mean, so we had the Akira meta for a while, right? And
mm.
everyone knew Akira was way too good. And people are gonna have different opinions on how it is now, but everyone will have to agree that Akira is way less prominent in the meta and far less strong than it was before because it got 2 lock. Because you got an extra turn to respond to it. And Phantom also has a 2 lock. And I think there's a part of me that's thought if a phobie has game winning displacement abilities,
Mm.
maybe it just needs 2 lock. And maybe a tractor needs 2 lock
I don't know
because
how much it
maybe
impacts
rushing.
these. The only reason I say that is because they are one move as compared. So Akira is kind of a special case because it was map wide. So like no matter where it
Right.
was doing what it needed. Phantom's a little different because it's a 2 mover and therefore can control much more space. I would think almost a tractor needs a 3 lock just because on many maps it takes so long to get it into position. So that like a 2 lock is almost I rarely see a game where you move out 2, then you move 1 and a tractor pull. Like that almost never happens. So the additional lock is almost irrelevant in that case. I'm sure there's some
I
games that
think
happens, but
on on small maps, I think it's more common, especially on turtle
absolutely, of
maps.
course.
The situation I'm thinking of is I'll play a map and I'll try and play for tempo. They play unicorn and just, they crap a couple traps on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a strong advantage. I'm like, okay, time to rush in there and start wiping stuff and heart rushing because they're not doing anything. And then out comes a tractor.
Yeah.
And I'm now in a position where I can't rush because I know that even if I kill the unicorn, a tractor is going to pull me into a bunch of traps that are going
Yep.
to kill me. And I'm going to get vault sniped by some other stuff and I'm going to lose the game. And
Hmm.
so now, because they had the brilliance make strategic decisions like use unicorn and use a tractor.
Yeah.
The match is now shifted to me having to stock up keys, and I never get to dive because unfortunately, unicorn just makes the dive more and more dangerous over time, along with the attractor, and it becomes a standoff experience. You know.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think the biggest thing is going to be a health nerf, and to the point almost where I think Ray Chargels possibly should be able to one shot it. Because
I'm
the
on board
more
with
I
that.
think, what was that?
I'm on board with that.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the comparison to Jar, being able to sacrifice a murder wing or a snowball or a whatever, because it's like, no, I got to remove that jar for reasons. A tractor's a way higher priority target. It is twice the investment from the player putting it on the board, but I don't know. Like it, maybe this is a health of the game thing. Just do it or rework it like entirely. Like I said, change it to only be single target. Change its range down to 2. Change it whatever. I think the other Sentinels go in the same bucket.
I used to be someone who said make it single target pull, but I
Mhm.
do appreciate unique mechanics. And
Yeah,
one thing I do like about a tractor is that there are maps where people try to hide by their heart, and you can use the heart to pull their phobies forward. And I kind of don't want to lose that because it is
yeah,
a
I do love those
strategically
plays too.
interesting thing. Yeah, especially Xylo comes to mind as a map where that's like core for me. I don't use a tractor a lot, but I do use a tractor on core on Xylo because the way you can heart rush is by putting the attractor there and saying you're gonna hide. I'm gonna make sure you come forward. You know.
I think I'd rather just set Xylo on fire, but that's just me. I hate that map. Once the once
I
people unlocked Miss Moffat, I started hating that map. It's been miserable ever since.
I love Xylo. I
Mhm.
acknowledge it's a map with problems,
Yeah.
but I think it has. I love how just how unique it is. It's a weird map. You know, like Phobies has all these maps that are here's a flat platform and some walls and some panic points, and here's this weird twisty abyssal monstrosity with like
Yeah.
4 islands that are hardly connected. And even if it has problems, which I think are solvable with
Mhm.
like a couple changes, I would rather have more maps like that, or would we just what's the map we just got? That's
Oh, another one
let's
bites the
see,
dust. The twice
Bites
lures
the
you were calling
Dust.
it. Is that the one you're thinking
Yeah, the
of?
twice. Yep,
I
that's
love that.
exactly
When
the
you
name.
said that off, like I love that. I don't think I want to call it anything else ever.
But as soon as I
That's the
saw
name from now on.
the twice lure, yeah. Well, once I saw another one bites the dust,
Yeah.
I mean, like my first thought was, "Whoa, this looks really interesting." And actually, that's how
Yeah.
I felt about the once lure too. When the once lure came out, I was in love with it because it was such an
Same.
interesting map.
Yeah.
It was still we didn't know how it would turn out
Yeah,
at the time.
in our own defense, that was still like I don't think even Xylo had that long. You know what I mean? Like we didn't know then what we know now, and if only we could go back and tell our younger selves. But this is definitely what I
Yeah,
would go
exactly.
back in time to correct myself on, not anything unrelated, nothing else.
But the one stores again, it's a map that with
Hmm.
a handful of changes becomes a really fun experience and feels unique. And I appreciate the developers taking risks on this instead of something like
Toys in the
in the
attic.
last update we got center stage,
Oh
where
yeah,
I just don't understand
that
like what needs someone to make that
yeah,
at
I
this
don't know.
point in the game's life.
Fair. Yeah, I could get behind that. What any other thoughts on a tractor before we move on? I think we beat this one to death.
Yeah, that's just I'll say this. I do appreciate that you talked about in other games the norm is when something gets nerfed, you stop using it because it's bad.
Yeah,
And even though this is not going far enough, I respect that the developers for Phobies are conservative in their changes and make small changes over
100%.
time. They haven't ruined a phobia yet,
Yeah,
and they haven't broken a phobia yet with their balance changes. And I think well, we're being hard on them, with the tractor, but I really think they deserve respect for going that route and not being overreactive.
yeah, 100% agree. I've mentioned that elsewhere that I do feel that the team overall, not just on balance change, but in general, seems to be very conservative about new
Hmm.
phobia introduction. Like Will Waffalo is always my example. Like that ability seems redonkulous on paper, and then you look at it and go, oh, yeah, it's fine. Uh, but it is. I appreciate that they aren't just dumping it out there and doing the 2009 era of MOBAs where it's this is the new thing, buy it or you're gonna lose. Like that
Yep.
really hasn't been the case.
It's a team that definitely respects their player base and
Yeah.
wants to make a game that's respectable, and I feel that's part of where I'm here, right? There are lots of other games to play out there,
Mhm.
and it's shockingly rare to find one where the developers actually care about making a game that is respectable.
It's a crazy concept. Unheard of. Which is sad. It kind of is. Like I'm not joking. It almost is.
It is really sad
Yeah.
because mobile gaming, it's huge. We all have
Yeah.
phones, right? There
Hmm.
are, I don't know how many mobile games out there, and how hard is it to find one, just one, that's actually trying to make a good game instead of just trying to find different ways to manipulate people into dropping the credit card for the newest advantage, you know?
Hmm. It's true. It's very true. But we'll put a tractor aside for the moment. We can run through some of these relatively quickly. But the next one on the docket
Yep.
is Bad Sushi. This is one that personally, I don't know. I think the way I put it in the other videos is I don't care. I'm still of the opinion that Bad Sushi is kind of the kind of phobia that if this thing is good, everyone's going to hate it. Like it will make the game miserable, I think. In
I
order
think.
for God.
No, 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 please. You
Well,
didn't finish your thought.
so it basically boils down to if this thing is good, if this is a quote unquote metaphobia and you would see this regularly, I think it would have to be pushed to the point that it would be so powerful as to be broken. Or if not broken, that the gameplay loops that it generates are going to be extremely boring. Of I just have to run away from it and kite it for 45 turns, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like imagine a tractor, how much you have to run away from it because okay, I can't just get pulled. I just lose. Okay, well if a
Mm-hmm.
bad sushi is big enough numbers, at a certain point it's just going to zone you in the same way, but in order the numbers that would have to increase because 600 is already pretty damn big even for melee. So that means that the only number that could increase is the health. And how much health are we going to give it? 6,000? Like, at a certain point, it's going to be effectively immortal, and your opponent will now control the board for however many turns it takes you to poke it to death.
Yeah, and its health isn't even big. I mean, it has the
Oh,
same
yeah,
health
currently, yeah.
as Moly Bully. And it's a one mover,
Right.
right? For one key less. Um, I think this was another big disappointment. I think for me with the update was in the previous update we were told that Bad Sushi would get a rework,
Yeah, I was going to bring that
and
up. I'm
then
glad you did.
yeah, we got the cooldown reduced. Eric Kate clarified and said this is like they're giving it one more shot, like a desperation attempt to try and make this thing work
Which,
for us.
like we said
I can
before,
respect
I'm
that.
fine with that. Yeah. It's been bad for
Yeah.
this long. What's another couple months?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
look, this
It's
thing
fine.
sucks. I'm not. We'll wait. We'll wait.
It is really funny how like we got bad sushi, bad's right in the name. Like, people make jokes about all the time. Then we get brute worst,
It's
who
mid
might just be the
sushi now, is
worst.
what chat's saying.
It-
It's
you
mid
have to wonder if
sushi.
there's like, I know the devs don't want it to be bad, so is it some kind of subconscious effect going on here?
Yeah, they've now convinced themselves psychologically that this is what it must be.
I don't know,
I kind of, you
but
know what I want? I want this thing to have a leap in the rework. I want it to like springboard, like it's flopping around and it springboards itself at someone.
I don't want that. But
That
I
that would be.
respect that you. I think then it's gonna become like a little too close to sheeping gas. I think.
Oh, I mean, well, I'm not saying that it's still going to be a poison. I'm just saying I want, like,
Oh,
I'm just thinking from an
oh,
animation perspective, that would be kind of funny. Like, you already have the flop with it. So, like, just make it into a leap. And then if they're going to do a rework, like, true rework. But Magikarp use Splash. Yep.
I want it to work. I want it to be the smiley of poison. And I
Hmm.
think it would be fun if every time it got hit, if it just kind of flopped around there and poisoned whatever hit it, you know?
I think that could work. That could work. But the problem is that just poison is inherently worse. So,
Yeah,
it'll.
it would be a yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it'll depend on what the ultimate numbers are, because if you're forcing them to burn through Muffin, burn through whatever, that could be useful. You know, like, make them do things. They have to have it.
Yeah. PVZ for Maid says bad sushi counters smiley. It
It's
is
just
worth
looking.
saying that Anda says that every time someone brings out smiley, he actually brings out bad sushi to counter it.
I've got to watch a replay where that happens, because I just don't even know why that would be good.
I don't think it's the optimal play,
Like,
but
that doesn't. That feels like, Anda, you're just beating those people anyway. That feels like you're just taunting them. Like, you're just doing this to be like, look, I can put a handicap and I'm still gonna win. Like, that's what that feels like.
yeah. I mean, it's not something. It doesn't make sense to me, but
Mhm.
it works, I guess.
Hey,
Technically, you're going up 2 keys, but
if
you
it
could get the
if
same
it works,
effect for just summoning like Innocuous and blasting it.
I was about to say, like, all right, it's only one key, but you have a much better phobia on the board. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Just pop some X out there and zone them.
All right,
So
well,
yeah, I
good.
do think that the change does
Mm.
address the number one issue that I had with Bad Sushi, which was because it had the cooldown,
Oh
you
yeah,
would
that
get
was dumb.
in, bomb the team, they would cure the poison, and Bad Sushi is just sitting there for a whole turn, and he literally cannot do anything. So he can't tank for your team or anything. So at least they have to deal with him and kill him. And I don't think he'll ever be meta. I don't think he can be meta,
Hmm.
but I think at least he isn't depressing anymore. I can
Yeah.
say that. He's not depressing anymore.
The only other thing I'll say is that I think Bad Sushi was probably phobie design number 6. Like, I seriously feel like this guy had to be single digit phobie design for a variety of reasons. Some of it's visual design, some of it's just the idea, but also just the way that it's constructed. It just feels like, to me, this screams this was an early phobie, and I can absolutely understand the team not wanting to let it go, but this one's got to go. This guy stinks.
It's going bad.
So the Blondie update. Thoughts on that one? Anything major other than,
It's it's fine. I
yeah?
mean, I was iffy about whether Blondie was even too weak. It must be because it got another buff. Just because I don't think it's healthy to balance the entire game around Chevelle, but Blondie with Chevelle is absolutely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And if
It kind of surprised
and
me
if
that
you
it was happening despite Shove Shark showing up.
yeah, right. That's kind of how I felt. I was like, oh, this was there are a couple buffs that happened to her. I thought, oh, really?
I mean, if
But
they
if the
need it, they need
data,
it.
I think that a lot of people are just not very good at using debuffs and understanding how to use debuffs, which is an inherent problem with Blondie. Like I play against, like for example, Bad Omen. Okay, Bad Omen is without a doubt in my mind one of the best 2 keys in the game.
Gotta be.
You
Yeah.
almost never see it in the meta, and it's
I just never
because
see
it's
it at
it's
all, let
hard
alone
to
in
use
the
follow.
meta.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you have to have a plan after you debuff, a follow-up plan. You have to make that debuff count. You have to win from it because you can't just debuff, lose your cat, and then stare at the match, right? You have to dive
Yeah.
with it.
Because
And
otherwise
that
you're just
that
like,
takes
yeah, you incinerated 2 keys and then you're giving them the time to walk it off, essentially. It's like,
exactly. So you don't see him much, even though he's very strong. And I think Blondie could be the same thing, where it might get
100%.
more buffs because every time I've played against a Blondie, um, they go up, they buff me, I back off, and I wait for 2 turns, and then I go kill things. They don't
Yeah.
have like a plan,
A
you
lot of
know?
people send them in essentially on a solo mission, even if it's Shove Sharked
Yeah.
in, whatever the case may be. But like you said, the follow up is not there. So I kind of hope we don't see too many more Blondie buffs because if people finally this comes up in other games sometimes when we're talking about the impact of buffs and nerfs, but I've seen other companies state this that they will buff things because they know that something is too good and the community just won't get it. So they push it to the point where like and I mean I'm paraphrasing, but that was effectively the statement. It's like, look, community, this thing is already too good, but you're not using it, so we're gonna buff it. You'll use it, and then you're gonna go, "Oh God," and then we'll reel it back for like a patch or two later. I don't think they're doing that, but it kind of feels like that.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing it, but I could see it makes sense to perceive it that way because Blondie is with Chevelle, it's definitely very playable. And I mean, it's more playable now, right? I mean,
Absolutely,
it's scarier than it ever has been before.
yeah.
So
What about we'll move on from Blondie. What about Blue? I don't really have anything other than like, all right, cool, Blue.
Blue has that same issue, right? People will play Blue and
Mm-hmm.
they will like walk it over to debuff something and then do nothing with it. So I'm not surprised that it got a buff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Fine. It got a buff. It was 25 extra debuff. It's not going to change anything, I think.
Yeah,
And it's not bad that it got buffed. Honestly, this skin could debuff like 500, and it would still be fine to me because the thing about blue is it is really hard to use.
yeah. And your
It can be
opponent can
devastating.
play around it rather much more readily than other debuffs because they can just poke
Yeah,
it with
exactly.
something that is inconsequential.
Often I will like poke it with the jar cannon, and I'm like, okay, jar cannon needs to get 2 more keys of value to even out, and you've lost this tool that you thought was gonna deal with my queen. You
Yeah,
know, and
exactly.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm fine that it got buffed. If it gets more buffs, that's fine with me too. I don't think it's. I think it'd be. Here's the thing: some phobies
Mm-hmm.
you could make number changes to them, and they would break the game. Like if you gave a tractor another like 100 attack or another 100 health, it
Mm-hmm.
would just be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if you gave blue an extra 100 debuff, it pretty much wouldn't change anything. And that doesn't mean it's bad right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that the phobie plays out more about how you play it than the phobie's stats. Either it's going to hit its target and it's going to have a big impact with how you did it, or it's not.
Yeah. No, I can get behind that. This one, I don't. Like I said, not too much to add to it. What about we got Bluelian next?
Well, I think we were all surprised. Were you surprised by this? I think the whole Discord was.
Yeah, I don't think I saw a single person that was like, "Yeah, it's about goddamn time." Like no one thought this was coming.
People were still reeling from the previous nerf. Bluelian lovers were like, "No, my poor baby Bluelian," you know, and
Yeah,
um, but Eric Cake, he was open about it, and he said that Bluelian continued to overperform at all levels of play, even in Sum of All Fears 3.
the only
So
thing I'll add to this, I kind of wish that every other melee phobia was pushed to Bluelian levels. Like I get the nerf to the spa, like that was fine.
yeah,
It it pretty much invalidated poison for the most part. It also caused other ramifications with elongating games and causing weird stuff. That's fine. But I've always felt that stat wise, it was up there. It was a pretty powerful phobia, and I think a lot of people, I guess, up to this point, had overlooked it. But
yeah, he's a good fighter.
yeah, I just kind of wish all
He was.
melee phobies were there because I think that would
Me too.
address a lot of things. Like it would fix
Me-
a lot of problems.
I have to say I had a match against Hoploy
Yeah.
where this nerf came into play. I killed his Bluean by 5 health, and so if it didn't have 200 chopped off from it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have won probably. So I'm in favor.
It
In
does
other
happen.
words,
Fair. That's fair. Yeah, I could have lived without this nerf. I think pretty much everybody just because since it came out of left field, I don't think anybody was expecting this one to happen. But like I said, I would rather have left this alone and then buffed virtually every other melee phobia instead. But it is what it is.
so here's the thing about Bluean. So Bluean
Mm.
is almost kind of like an inverse of Blue and Bad Omen. Bad Omen, you have to have a lot of skill to use it well, which is why you don't see it very often.
Mhm.
Boolean, you have to have a lot of skill to shut it down properly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people won't change up their strategies to deal with it. They'll keep on going with the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you've seen me do a couple matches, for example, where I've won against Booleans and I use Cerberus. It's not like Cerberus is a coincidence there. I picked Cerberus because they are spending 5 keys on Boolean. He's support, and your like 200 healing around doesn't matter against my 1,000 damage hit, and
Mhm.
you can't fight with this guy either, right? The more support someone plays, the more health I play on the board, because support can't fight. You can always overwhelm them with stats,
Yeah, sheer
right?
numbers will get there.
And I think most people, when a blue lane comes on the board, they just keep with the same strategy they were playing and they don't adapt.
Yeah, you're not
And I
going
think
to
that's
poke
part
this.
of the problem.
Yeah, you're not going to poke down their team. You're not going to chip them away. Like I said, you need to. There's skill testing in everything in Phobies, just about.
Right.
I mean, there's probably some that we could find a counter argument for, but there is the question of whose skill is being tested. Because, yeah, people will blame, oh, well, this phobia is too powerful and therefore it's too easy to use. Yes, but is there a skill being tested on your part, the opponent's part, to try and adapt to the scenario?
Right.
It's not always
I like
strictly about it's not a one-sided exchange in this.
Yeah, and Blulian, he's the only. I want to say, I'm going to say this, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm.
He's the only healer in the game whose heals you can stop. If someone brings up Blulian, you can bring out Honey Bear, goop their tile, and now they have to wait 2 more turns to try and place another one,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's
And
true.
now
Yeah,
you're getting Honey Bear,
I
who
guess you
is
could
a
Furk
key
in the other
chaser.
healers. That's probably the only other scenario.
Yeah, but it's usually though they heal immediately, so it's like not really the best investment, you know. Like you're getting Honey Bear, he's ranged, he's a turret, he has solid stats, and he just took your healer, your 5 key healer, and made it a 5 key melee fighter that's crap.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, the number of people I've seen bring Honey Bear out against Blulian, I think in the last year is like 1.
Yeah, it almost
You
never
know,
happens.
people just don't do it.
Chat
Yeah, so
saying
I think
Furkin says hi. Yeah, we covered that. I don't understand how Gravedigger fits into this, but sure. And is there another phobia that's GD that's a healer?
no Gravedigger. I think I think.
Because
Can
we're
you
talking about the
wall
healers that can be turned off. That's unless you can't Gravedigger the thing though. Like you can't put a Gravedigger
I don't.
statue over the
I
spot.
can't remember if you can.
I'm like
I
90%
can't
sure
remember
you
if you can.
can't. Unless the assumption is you Gravedigger ahead of time to turn off the likely spot location. I don't know. Gravedigger can put an obstacle to prevent healing on that hex. I don't think that's true.
No, I think Dudio means before the spot.
Yeah, it must be before, because yeah, I don't. You can't put it
Oh,
on there
Fermate
once
says
it's
he's
there.
not talking about healers.
And where did that? Whatever. Okay, fine. Whatever. All right, we're moving on. I
Come
don't know
on,
what's
man.
happening. Okay, here's one we're actually going to talk about because I think there's more game design things that are more interesting here.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you'll give me the honor of shitting on this thing first. This
50
is
more disease damage. That's what he needed, right?
this is the you said it earlier that we're it sounds like we're crapping on everything they're doing, but like I don't want it to come across that way, but it's going to come across that way because there's no other way to phrase this. This makes no sense. This is not the problem with Brutewurst, and the solution for Brutewurst was already present in the patch because you did it for Collector. And again, this is something you also said offline, Karst, or you probably maybe even said on the last show, that the coolest designs, like Brutewurst is one of the coolest designs in Phobies. Why is it doo-doo?
Yes.
Why is this thing just unwashed ass? Like this is awful, and I hate it because he's so cool. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not super enthusiastic about the AoE disease thing. I think a lot of people are like, if this was actually playable, however that happens, way more stats, it has more movement, it has range, or whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think a lot of people would be upset because I think the disease mechanic, similar to poison, is just one of those anxiety inducing things. And yes, it's all about fears, and the name of the game is Phobies, and your heart is literally anxiety level. That doesn't mean that people actually want to feel anxiety when they play. And I think that disease, even when it is bad, is so anxiety inducing for many players that I think we would have an enormous amount of complaints if Brute was actually meta viable.
It's still pretty common that new players come in and complain about Smiley.
Yeah. I could 100% see that.
Yep. My opinion on Brutewurst is I don't really want him to get 2 movement like Collector, because I feel like his movement animation, his tiny little hop, like it just fits so well with 1 movement. I
That is like the worst excuse to not buff it. It's funny, but like it's like, well, it's gonna look stupid if it moves faster, so we're not gonna do it. It just looks dumb. I get what you're saying though. Like it does. Like that's why I said everything about this visually. This guy is great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think you could double its disease damage.
You could make it infinite. It doesn't matter. Like it could almost literally be infinite.
Yeah. It's in the community, a lot of people call this thing Bad Sushi 2.0.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah, it's the same idea, right? It's 1 movement. If it gets in, it does a little AoE effect. It's disease instead of poison, and then it dies.
Assuming it even ever connects, because I think once you're past a certain collection level, this will never connect. Or if it connects, it'll be against a bunch of mechs, and it doesn't. Then okay, the whole purpose is non-existent.
Yeah, Chevelle, I think you could land it at least.
Possibly, yeah.
And also, in its defense, it does have 2,500 health. That's Blondie's health pre-buff. It's like in that super heavy range. Cerberus has 3,000, so it's very bulky. It could, but it's not gonna pay off. I'll take Blondie, even if someone played all undead or all dimensionals. I would still take Blondie over Brutewurst. You know?
Yeah. I mean, aside animation silliness aside, if this thing had 2 movement, would you play it? Like, do you think it is viable if they just gave it 2 movement?
No, I don't think so.
You still think it's not good enough?
I think so. Here's my issue. Okay, it's the Bogart issue. Okay, the devs gave Bogart 1 movement because they saw the bomb. The bomb does crazy damage, and they thought we better make sure it's hard to land this thing.
Yeah.
But damage next turn is worth so much less than damage this turn, because damage this turn can kill things, which prevents me taking damage. And disease doesn't do that. So spending 6 keys on a melee phobie to apply disease, I think I'm probably still inclined to play something like Foul instead of this, because Foul at least has 2 range on its ability.
Yeah.
And you can try and toss a disease poke. Foul tends to die, but sometimes he doesn't, and sometimes you can make it work, right? A Brutewurst is always going to die. And I think part of the way you win at Phobies is by making good key trades.
Yes.
And I can't see Brutewurst ever accomplishing that, is it?
What if and I 100% agree with all the statements you made about poison damage, or disease, although it carries over to poison also. It's like just about everything else in life. Having it now is better than having it later. You can just do more with now than you can with later. So what about this hypothetical? 2 movement, and it had the Bad Omen style AoE. So instead of AoE around Brutewurst, it was hit a target, and then it was an AoE around them. I don't know how that would work, animation-wise.
It's Tick.
Yeah, Tick is, I guess, a better example, yeah.
Yeah, 6 key Tick. I mean, Tick is at least playable, so I think it would become playable. It would become, like, a lot of people use Tick poorly, and they like suicide it into a team and then try and wait for that, like, was like 250 disease damage to slowly tick down.
You're gonna get there
And
next decade.
yeah, exactly. And the right way to do it right is to use tick as part of a dive composition, and that AoE damage kills something
Mm.
when you dive. And I can see brute force getting used like that. Um yeah, because he would kind of be comparable to bad sheep at that point.
Yeah, I don't hate Bad Sheep. It's actually surprised me. I didn't expect a lot out of it, but the range on it matters. I don't think for
Yeah.
ironically for the same animation reasons. Like in this case, they would have to actually redo the animations if they gave him some sort of arranged thing. But if it's
Right.
having it do the tick AoE type, I don't know how we got to come up with a term for this AoE versus that AoE. But if you do the tick version, it's kind of like just do the current animation and then everything else just acts like they got hit and you apply the effect. I presume that's simpler than redoing everything. So
I'm hoping that here's a trend that I noticed. So in the previous balance patch, not the one we're discussing now, but the one before this,
mhm.
Blondie, Ogre, and Flesh Collar all got small changes. I think like Blondie got
Yeah,
like 50 more damage or something useless like that.
yeah,
Um Flesh Collar got the cooldown reduction actually was which was amazing. I shouldn't say that was small. And Ogre I think got the adjustment to any triggers.
yeah,
And then in this patch they're like, "You know what? Let's just give him 300 more health." Which is a massive increase,
yeah. It's
right?
huge.
That's huge. So I'm kind of hoping that they have some kind of philosophy where they make a slight adjustment, and then based on how the win rate changes on that, they are more or less willing to take a more risky
Yeah,
adjustment. So maybe in the next balance patch, because Eric Cake had said that he would like to be able to do balance patches every update. He would like for that to be the case.
I think that makes sense, like as a general philosophy. And if the cadence
Right.
can be maintained, because I understand, like this is something that people out there, viewers, listeners, need to understand if you don't already, is that it's not as simple as, hey, we'll just throw no, like you can't just do things randomly and be like, well, it'll work itself out. No, the game could implode if they aren't cautious about things. So I can definitely appreciate, and we talked about this earlier, we can appreciate the conservative approach they've taken. And as you're pointing out, if the plan is we'll do X, see the results, and then we can base our next decision, which we think we'll probably have to do, but we'll see, on the results from X. To me, that makes sense, and that's a reasonable approach. So we're laughing and
Yeah,
joking
we don't.
about a lot of these changes, but they could be part of a greater whole.
Yep, and we don't want to Chevelle the game off a ledge, you know.
How long were you keep cooking that one? You're cooking that one for a while. You had that one. It didn't matter the topic. You were like, I'm getting this in tonight. I'm saying this one.
Gotta wait for my moment.
All right, let's lump all of the non Jackalope Kings together. Although I guess we could talk about the Jackalope King as well. I'll be honest, I don't think this was enough of a buff. I am still of the opinion that there's a reasonable reality where the Jackalope Swarm opener is oppressive, but it's not this one right now. Like we still need to buff them further.
Maybe in large. So I agree. This is a who really cares kind of change.
Yeah.
Here's the issue. I think that you cannot really address with these phobies with stat changes, and it's
Mhm.
this. It's a clan pack attack bonus pairing bonus. How many melee phobies can you play at the same time reasonably on a small map? Two.
Yeah.
If I play
Yeah.
more than two, it doesn't matter how good they are or what's going on. They
Just
just
get in the
can't
way.
coordinate to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
And that's an underlying thing that's never going to change because I have had maps where I've decided to bring out the jackalopes, and even though I kill things with them and I'm like, heck yeah, jackalope power, I can share this with people. What ends up happening is as the match goes on, I can't do things because I have all these jackalopes on the board, and we have a phobie limit, right? 5
yeah.
on small maps, 7 on large maps. If there was no phobie limit, I think the jackalopes could actually be strong,
Yeah,
but
that
so
could be
long
true.
as they're sucking up these valuable limited spots, I'm never going to pick jackalopes on a small map.
I think
It doesn't.
yeah,
It's
I agree with you. I think there's multiple pieces here that would have to go into a buff to make these viable in the absence of the hypothetical Jackalope Queen. So, we've already seen group bonuses in the form of the Speedolas that it's multiple buffs. So, that has to be here. My personal thing is they should all either have baseline more health or get more health as part of the buff, as well as additional movement. Like they go into a frenzy and they get the Speedola movement buff to help alleviate what you were just describing, just the clunkiness of having a bunch of melee. But they also likely just need more numbers for the pack attack in general. Like yes, I put say 7 keys worth of stuff on the board, but it has to be these. So it probably needs to be like 9 or 10 keys worth of value, technically, in order to, because if any of them dies, it's then going to decrease some of the stuff. So it should be like pack attack is plus 150 for every jackalope you have, not just having them. And then the third thing
yep.
is, oh, good.
No, you had a third thing. Finish.
Well, the third thing is resurrect. I think resurrect just, I don't know how you fix it. That's a larger issue, but like resurrect is brutal on weaker and newer players, collection wise, experience wise, etc. But it's kind of doo-doo at higher levels because it's just like Pterodactyl's a great example, which I know we're kind of digressing, but like Pterodactyl is a nightmare for people with low collection levels or people that are new to the game. You just don't see Pterodactyl that much, and there's a lot of reasons for it. Droney among them.
Well, I will say I think Daisy is a great phobie.
Mm-hmm.
When I did All Undead for the Month of the Undead event,
Yeah.
there were a couple undead phobies that I brought out every single match, and I could just feel like this is an undead phobie that's carrying me right now and allowing me to win. And Daisy was always way up there.
I can see that.
Pterodactyl usually overperformed for me, like compared to my expectations. Like I was like, I guess I'll use Pterodactyl. But once it was on the board, I was usually like pretty decently happy with how it did and thought, wow, this is better than I was expecting. Like not amazing, but not like a throw like I thought it would be. Um, but it's the melee. They're melee, right?
Yeah.
They're 2 keys, so you don't want to capture panic points and throw them away that way. Resurrect doesn't really matter for melee phobies. Like, how am I going to struggle to step on this thing? That's the value in Daisy, right? The value in Daisy is
you
I
got
can
to put in the
harass you
effort
from far away. Yeah, exactly. So
I will say,
I don't know.
Dudio Bugtron is pointing out in chat with the buff, they have 600 health and 450 damage. Wiggy has 740 health and 600 damage. Yes, there's resurrect.
Yeah.
But like that kind of says it all. I got to spend 3 extra keys to get a bad Wiggy. Like that. I don't know. They like that literally that's my entire I'm done. The defense rests, the prosecution rests, I guess.
I'm ready to move on to the next criminal.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I don't know if you had peeked, but Phantom is next, so I figured criminal might act. Did you peek? Did you know?
No, I did not.
That's even better. That's even better. All right, Phantom. I'll let you take it away, Karst. I know you said that you didn't think this was enough.
Yeah, so Phantom needs like a couple things. This is the number one thing I think. This is the harshest nerf they could have given it, reducing the range. And I will say that since they've made this change, I can at least keep track of what Phantom's going to do, and that's nice because at 3 range, I could
all bets are off
in arena. There was just no way I could keep track of what this guy could do. It was too much to calculate.
Yeah.
And at 2 range, it's stressful, but I can do it. I think his health is still just ridiculously high. 1,500 health on this thing. I mean, like I said, Moly Bully is 1600 for 4 keys. If I look at other 5 keys,
And this is a way
well,
like Molly
Blulian.
Bully has literally no text, so like
Well, Blue. Okay, so Blulian just got reduced to 1600, right? So
yeah.
Phantom has 100 less than that. Um, Leela has 150. So should Phantom have as much as like a basic melee trapper? That doesn't seem right to me.
Part of it is, I
Um,
think, like the numbers are deceiving because yes, it has a bunch of health, but that's not the part anybody cares about. Like, yes, it does matter after the fact, or I guess maybe in between throws, like flings. Throws feels like it's the wrong word, but like flings with this thing, the transposes. But what I don't understand what the intended counterplay is to Phantom, like at all.
I
We
don't think there is one. I
but
think
I'm just saying, like hypothetically, like theoretical, what are you supposed to like? What is because against a tractor or something like that, it probably follows the same Chuck Jar thing, where it's okay. These are supposed to be fragile. They're not, but they're supposed to be. So you jump them. What do you do? What are
right.
you supposed to do against Phantom? I have no idea what the strategy is that I'm trying to enact when this if this thing is on the board, other than not
Yeah,
lose.
I don't think
Like,
it has a counterplay.
yeah,
The the only counterplay I've ever seen against it is Shadow Force using her own Phantom plus Firkin to Phantom in the Firkin to land the disable and shut down the enemy Phantom, so then
this
you
is
can
the
play
old
the game.
Akira Wars. Then, like it. I mean, it's different, but it's what
Right.
what's the
But that's the thing.
stupid
It's
saying? It's
not
like
really.
the king is dead, meet the new king, or something like that.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
nothing's
Uh,
changed.
I'm really just hoping for health nerfs on this thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
drastic, but I think it needs to go down to 1,000 or less, probably less.
I, will that like in all seriousness, like will that actually matter? It will matter. Like there
It
are
will.
games that where it will die, 100%. But most of the time when I see Phantom, it's not just that they can't kill it. There's just like literally no chance they can kill it. Not because they don't have the damage, but they can't get to it. And it would still do the thing. Now, this is going to be more exposed now, shorter range. But like, I don't know. It just feels like there's no reality where you get on it, eliminate it, and you're not doing the attractor work for them. You know what I mean?
I've played against a lot of people who have brought Phantom out, and
Mm.
I go super aggressive. Like the second I see this thing, I'm just throwing everything I can at them, and I have all these plays I look through, and I'm like, oh my god, short by 200 damage, short by 300 damage, short by
Okay.
150 damage, and it's just like, God, I could shut this thing down and push them back to their vault and take control of the map if it had less health. But because it's so tanky,
Mm-hmm.
it can just kind of face tank your team, and then whoops, they just brought in, erratic or something like that and wiped most of what you have.
Mm.
I think the health is. I'm not saying it will be balanced with the health, but I think the health is part of what it needs to be balanced.
Hey, I'm willing to try it.
Um,
I'd like to see it because it at least introduces the idea of okay, now the Phantom player has to be more cautious and what's the next step beyond that of the decision tree
mhm.
of okay, I put Phantom on the board, you go into aggro mode. I go, all right, I got to protect my investment for a few turns. Then what's the next step? And then what's the next step after that? And how does this change the gameplay pattern? Maybe it's enough. Maybe I don't know. I'd have to. It's now going beyond what I can probably theorize at the moment. Certainly right now. So I'd want to see it as
it's
it
the
is right
same
now.
way I
I don't think
feel
it's enough.
about. It's the same way I feel about a tractor,
Mm.
where like, why do I want a tractor to have 750 health and a 2-turn lock? It's because to me, a tractor's role should be that you need a playmaker, something to help end the game, so you play it and you have an established team. It should not be a tempo play that you're playing out. And by the way, this thing also ends the game for me. And Phantom's in that same category as a tractor, where
Yeah.
when do I use Phantom? Well, whenever I feel like. I don't have any problem with the game's at a standstill. Here's this really good tool that can blow up the enemy side because we're both not doing anything, and I can afford to take on the tempo loss.
Yeah.
That I think that seems appropriate to me. And I think lowering its health is how we get there.
Yeah. I could see it. Or we could just make it 9 keys. I mean, you just add 4 keys on there and don't worry about it. So after Phantom, we got Flesh Crawler, another recipient of consecutive buffs. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm fine with Flesh Crawler. Keep pushing it until it's meta.
I'm geeked about this one
Mhm.
because after 2 balance patches, this is the exact stats that I had in my balance document that I wanted for it to have.
Ooh.
1 turn cooldown and 2300 health was exactly what I wanted for it. So
Mhm.
I can't say if it's perfect or not, but it was like a moment of like, yeah,
That's pretty.
not
That
saying anything
that is
because I
pretty cool. It
said
feels
it.
good.
Yeah, it
That
just feels good.
yeah.
Um, it's the same health as Motherload right now
Mhm.
with a 1 turn cooldown. I mean, you have seen in your tournaments, Chomp,
Yeah.
you've seen someone beat Alien Engineer with a flesh crawler before it got this buff.
Yeah.
That with careful play, raising hell gives enough sustain that flesh crawler could kind of cause havoc and be a huge pain in the ass.
Yep.
And this just helps him do that. So I'm thrilled about it.
Yeah.
I've only used it once since the buff. That one time I used it, I was really happy with his performance. So I would like to. I'm going to encourage myself today to use him more.
Yeah. I'm looking forward
It's
to
hard.
seeing more Flesh Crawler, and the comparison was always there to Motherload, but I think the
Yep.
fact that it now is the same health pool, which again mechs typically have more health, but this is the level of stat push I want to see on melee phobies. And it's obviously
Yes.
going to be different for any given melee phobie, what its combination of abilities and other stuff is, but why not just push them? If we have to push it to this extreme for Flesh Crawler, who had a pretty decent ability to begin with, admittedly longer
Yeah.
cooldown previously and blah blah blah, but like Raising Hell wasn't bad inherently. So just do this across the board. Every melee phobie, let's
Right.
get him. Why not? So yeah, Flesh Crawler,
I'd love
thumbs
to
up.
see it.
uh,
Yep.
Fl- Flopsy,
Nothing more to say, and I'm really happy.
yeah, Flopsy, we don't care about. We already talked about that. Hoovy, uh, yeah, take it away.
I hate this phobia. Um,
Yeah, you've said that
I,
before.
I do. Well, I think a quote of yours that I use
Mm,
often is Phobies is a toilet game, right?
yeah,
Like you need to be able to like one problem Phobies has, aside from the economy, which I think is the biggest issue, is that when I start a match, I don't know how long it's going to last.
yep.
Magic the Gathering, when does the game end? When I'm out of cards to draw. There's
Hmm.
some sense that I know when that match will end.
Right.
Clash Royale, matches are like 5 minutes max. There's like sudden death. Then they have like a draw breaker system so that
Yep.
it just ends. Hearthstone, same thing. Bottom of the deck, match is over. There's no way for Phobies matches to end. And giving us a Phobie whose
Before anybody
special
says it,
ability
no,
is
panic points don't count. There's a lot of problems with that, but it's a longer discussion.
yeah,
So somebody's going to say it in the comments.
yep. Hoovy makes matches take longer. That's his special ability. And why would you want to add that? Because the worst feeling in Phobies, I think, when you're a veteran player, it's right before bed. You think to yourself, I'm just gonna play a quick Phobies match. And you
That's
queue
your
into something
first
like Phobopolis.
mistake. I've done that so many times. That's why I don't play on my phone. Well,
You,
there's a lot of reasons I don't play on my phone anymore, but yeah, I don't do that.
you queue into Phobopolis and you're there for 45 minutes. It feels
I
terrible, and you're like, I just
made a
want this to end.
mistake.
Yeah,
I
I made the mistake. And they made a mistake with Hoovy, I'll just say.
there's a lot of ways I think Hoovy should be redesigned. I like the idea, but I think what Hoovy really needs to lean into is force it. Like Hoovy hits the board, it's heart rush mode. I'm going for your heart. And there needs to be some tie into that where it's like we now have this mad rush. Either they're trying to race you and they shouldn't be able to because Hoovy's on the board, or they now need to completely shift to defense and it reorients the focus of the game. Now that may be problematic for other reasons, but I think that's a more interesting phobie than what Hoovy's doing currently.
Yep. You said that to me before, and I,
Mm,
I love that idea. I've ran with it. This idea that he should only be able to do love sucks if he's hitting the enemy heart.
mm,
And then if he's hitting an enemy phobie, maybe he could heal himself or maybe he could heal phobies around him or something like
yeah,
that. in this way, he's still thematically doing the same kind of thing, but he's helping games end, and that's how he's contributing instead of making. There was someone in the community who's trying to say Hoovy should be able to use Love Sucks when it hits obstacles, and
But
I don't
why?
have words for
What
how
is
much I
it
would
that you
hate
hate
that.
most about fun? Why do
Right?
you
Like,
hate
why do you want?
fun? That's
Like, why would you
somebody.
just can you
Oh,
imagine a world where we just make rocks in the back of the map and poke them to keep our heart up while taking panic point damage every turn that's completely negated?
remember you and I talked about this where I think it was last show where somebody asked, well, what about the people who don't agree with the things we suggest about speeding up games and stuff like that? This is that person because that person wants a stall map with 98 turns to be the natural game state every time. That's what they want.
Yep.
And they hate
They
fun.
want it until they can't. They want it until they realize they can't open their jacks every day.
It's just some people just hate
That's
fun.
when I used to play. My first ultra rare that I got from my Dreadful pack was
Mm.
Heartbreaker, and so
Yeah.
for a long time I was a Heartbreaker main. He was I wanted him the most,
Yeah.
and so I was thrilled. I stopped using him because he's so slow that I
Mm.
would go through 50 async matches and not open all my jacks
Wow.
because so little was happening because I was waiting for his cooldown.
Mm. Haven't seen Hoovy before. Is it new? Not really. 6 months ago? Question mark.
Yeah, I want to say. Oh, February, wasn't he Valentine's Day?
Yeah, but it wasn't this Valentine's Day, was it? You're right.
Yeah,
Now that you're saying that, was it last year's Valentine's Day? It had to have
I'm
been.
pretty sure it's this one.
Was it? So then
Yeah,
only 4 months
I think so.
ago? Or no, it's actually July now. 5 months ago. It's July
Time
now.
flies.
Um, maybe
I
that
think
is
so.
true because it feels like it was a while ago, but But either way, yeah,
Yeah,
Hoovy, this update, whatever. I
I
don't
just
care.
I just looked up February of this year. That's how
Okay.
fast time goes.
Hey, Corey, thank you for the sub. Much appreciated. I turn off the notifications when we're doing this, even though I'm now making a notification. But the sound still goes off, but it doesn't do like all the other stuff. So apologies for that. But thank you. All right, we got Jackalope King. We kind of talked about the same thing. Microscopic. I don't care. Do you care?
Well, I do.
No.
I
Ooh, all right.
I have an ad that popped up. I gave you a sub too.
Oh, thank you, Karst.
I remember. Well, I get them for free from
Yeah.
Amazon Prime,
Yes.
and I forget to use them. So you thanking Quera for subbing to you reminded me that.
See, this
to
is
check.
why
I was
they
like,
always
oh,
tell streamers and stuff like you got to remind people, and it's like, why would I have to remind people? Well, because it's not what's on
yeah.
people are thinking about. But
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly. I just forget it exists.
yeah,
I mean, honestly, there's probably like a year's worth of subs that have just sat there because I forget it exists, and I
fair.
don't. Anyway, so I love microscopic.
Okay.
I always when I used to play Akira all the time,
Mhm.
I would use Mike instead of a turret on maps that had a lot of abyss tiles.
Okay.
Because he hits like a truck.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
150 damage. Also, at 950 health, that's the same health that Unicorn has. So he's no longer fragile, I would say. He can now control space. I could
Okay.
say.
All right, you're selling me on it.
And yeah, and I played against Dudio earlier today. We were messing around on what's it called, Dark Sarcasm, and trying things out, and he was microscopic, and I kept going through different plays trying to, like, I'll snipe this thing, and nope, everything I tried, it survived, and that's when I realized, it was just today I realized this guy can
I
hold
was
some
today
space.
years old when I
So
learned microscopic's a monster. See, it
yeah,
has double
I
meaning because
started
he is a
using-
monster. He's also a monster phobia. Did you get that one?
He is a monster.
Did you get that joke?
I got it now. Now that you explained it to me, thank you.
I had to make sure everybody understood. It was one of those, real high level jokes. Yeah, you're selling me on it. I'd be willing to give him a shot now. I didn't really care before, but all right, I could see it.
It's also with Chevelle around, when you shove a mic, I mean, that's 1100 damage you're doing there. That's enough to kill, well, a unicorn. That's
yes, that is
like
true.
80% of a Bowmangle's health bar.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, microscopic shoved into like bow mangles plus a 1 key, that's a dead bow. So I think this guy,
All right.
it might take a while for the community to pick up on him, but I
Mhm.
think he's at a point now where there are maps where I would like to use him as core.
I think as an alternative turret role, that makes sense. I could see that.
Yeah, anytime a map has a lot of walls and I don't want to be used, I don't want to use Gravedigger. I'm always looking for things to replace Gravedigger
Mhm.
because the devs love giving us so many small maps that are filled with walls for some reason.
Yeah,
So,
that seems to be a common trend.
yeah. So Mike, I think, is a good candidate for those maps now. We'll see.
Seems reasonable. All right. I can dig it. Minotaur buff. This is like the fourth one.
Cool. I guess we'll see if this one is enough.
Maybe,
I don't know.
maybe this time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
maybe this time.
I do like
That's it.
Minotaur overall. I've always thought that it was underutilized, but it's the melee phobia problem. So we'll see.
You What was really interesting to me was I had
Mm,
asked Eric because I was surprised that
yeah,
Minotaur, he keeps getting his buffs, and there's Baby Snaky, and so
true.
Minotaur has 1500 health, 425 AOE damage.
Yeah,
Baby Snaky has, let me pull it up here.
I want to
He
say it's
has
500.
1300 health.
Uh huh.
He has 1300 health and 500 damage, so 200 less health and 75 more damage. And it's not AOE; it's single target.
Yeah,
In my opinion, Minotaur is so much better than Baby Snaky.
yeah.
But I asked him, and he said that Baby Snaky has a significantly higher win rate than Minotaur.
I could see that being the case because again, this is probably just flooded by lower ranks, and this is not, as always, it's not intended. If you're a lower rank player, we all were. This is not intended to be insulting, but I imagine big numbers scary as far as attack goes. Like I feel like this is one of those people use Baby Snaky and their opponent hangs something and it dies to Baby Snaky, but people never line up for a Minotaur sort of thing. I don't know. I
You know
feel
what
like
else?
it's
The
got to be
snake
something like
factor.
that. What was that?
It's the snake factor. It's just scarier than a
Yeah,
cow.
exactly. Minotaur plus Gonzo is a scary combo. I mean, yes. Are you spending 7 keys to do that very often? Probably not. But yeah, Baby Snaky, I don't know how that thing has escaped getting buffs. I would love to use the stapler remover, but that guy sucks. there's no way to put it. Uh, Mopsy, Ogre.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an onion boy. I
You
don't
go
know.
first on this one.
Well, Ogre, I think, kind of falls into the same Hoovy discussion of like, to a degree.
Yeah.
Ogre
Yep. That's how I feel about it.
yeah, Ogre conceptually, I think actually is okay. So Hoovy, I think its actual idea, and if executed properly, is an interesting gameplay mechanic. I think Ogre, no matter how it's executed, good, bad, or otherwise, is always going to be a problematic game mechanic because while I'm coming from behind, I can do this cool thing, sounds great on paper, in execution and what actually happens to the people involved in the game is it feels miserable because either you're winning and it's like, okay, it didn't matter what I did because they put out this overpowered phobia that because I'm winning, I now lose. Or I'm losing and this guy isn't good enough. Why did I bother doing this? No
Well,
one wins.
the crazy thing is, as of the previous patch, when they
Mhm.
increased his threshold for getting buffed to 4,000, I don't remember what it was before. Was it 2,500 or 3,000 or something like that?
I want to say 3,
I
but either way.
4,000 health is no longer low. I mean,
Yeah.
hearts start with just like a little over 6,000, I think, on small maps a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it's like this is just he's always basically if you're trading panic points back and forth, Ogre's going to be online. So in
Yeah.
some sense, he's kind of lost his theme, and now he's just a 7 key that has 2,000 health and 750 damage, basically. You
It's a
know,
significant amount. Yeah, on a small map, and even on a large map, 4,000 health is still, yeah, it's half your health, but 4,000 is still a lot. Like you can
right?
definitely make something happen.
Yeah, it's not you're not like in comeback territory is what I mean, you know?
Yeah,
4,000
exactly.
like yeah.
The
And
lost
what's
identity, I think, is a
interesting
very good point.
yeah, and what's interesting too is like Sparky has 2,000 health and 400 base damage and 400 electricity damage. So this is almost just a better Sparky, right? Like Sparky has 50 more damage than Ogre
That's
with the
I
exact
was
coma.
thinking that as you started saying, and I'm like, wait a minute, is Sparky really that? That's weird. I don't know. I don't know what Ogre's function is now. Like I said, I like the idea of the, and I think most people would. They'd be like, oh yeah, it's a cool comeback mechanic where it's like I can do this Hail Mary play. I happen to have 7 keys, but if it were good and it was a viable thing to do, people are just going to do it every time, and therefore no one's ever going to attack because you'll get blown out by the other player's ogre if you're ill
Right.
prepared.
It would become I mean, I don't have a lot of experience playing Ogre,
Mm,
and it's because to play Ogre you have to get below 4,000 heart health, and I'm
mm.
an aggressive player. There's a meta that exists where if ogre's actually really good, 4,000 heart health is not actually dangerous, and that would mean that the optimal strategy would be to pass turns until your heart gets low enough. And that seems like a crappy kind of meta to have to me.
Exactly. What I think this needed was in the update that he came out, like revert some of these nerfs, drop it back down to like 2,500 health or something like that. And they need a phobie that deals your own heart damage to do something. And then you pair the two to play this like razor thin edge of like I'm killing my own heart in order to buff my guys. So it gives your opponent this other out. Their counterplay is either, okay, I need to kill you before this stuff comes online. Presumably you can't. So now Ogre plus hypothetical comes out. They start fighting. Okay, now your opponent shifts to I need to rush the heart or spread out across the map, claim all the panic points, and pressure you before these two can run around and dominate the board. But that
That'd be
doesn't
kind of
exist.
interesting. Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting. The other suggestion I
Mm.
had was just have them activate on your own heart going below 4,000 as well. And that way it's like when someone's heart goes down, you can both use it. So it becomes as much of a heart rush tool as he is a heart protection tool in some sense. I'm not saying I think it's a great solution, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like this guy's design philosophy and what's going on with
Yeah,
him.
I don't. This is one that I just don't know that's salvageable. Just with the original goal. It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Russell got another buff.
This is a buff that I could not stand. I think
Really?
Russell's in your tournaments. Russell's won matches even
Yeah.
on small maps. There was an Alien Engineer versus Shinra match
Mm-hmm.
where Alien Engineer brought Russell out and won because of him. I think Russell is okay. So you've played Duelist,
Yes.
and what pissed me off about Duelist was that when it first came out, it was about controlling the board and your proximity, what's adjacent to you, what you can hit in a line, range and stuff like that. And they just kept adding more and more abilities that neglected the board, that were just
Yes.
global range.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fun to play a board game where the board doesn't matter. And I will always dislike Russell for having an ability that affects the entire map and does not care where anything is. I think Russell was already quite good for the situations he is playable in. He's a lot like Smiley. Smiley is just fine in the situations he's playable in. But Smiley gets used all the time when people are like Smiley is the number one comeback attempt I see, where people are down like 10 keys and they just try to shove a Smiley into my team and just hope
That's
I will be dumb enough that
what.
my entire team will die of disease somehow.
Yeah, like 30
And
years from now. Like what?
yeah, right. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I don't know
And
what
I see the
disease
same
you
thing with
think you're giving
Russell.
them, but it's not like movie bubonic plague or something that like consumes people in 6 hours. Like that's not how Smiley works.
Exactly. And I see the same thing with Russell, where people bring him out where I have a couple non-mechs
Mm.
and we're about to fight. Um, and the people use him in ways that don't really make sense. And I felt like his
It's
poison was
probably
already
why he got the
enough.
buff.
Yeah.
More
I think he
people are
gets
using him
misused a lot.
incorrectly.
And the thing is this, I don't, based on design issues, I don't want every phobie to become part of the main meta. I don't want Hoovy to be part of the main meta. I don't want Ogre to become part of the main meta, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
And Russell's another one where if I started seeing Russell, if he got good enough where
I've
everyone was
always
like,
said that if Russell was actually like regular every game, it's a problem and people
yeah,
will be miserable.
if he was like pre nerf boss,
Yeah,
and people just brought him out all the time, that would really suck to play against.
100%. What I think, because
It,
chat's thrown out a bunch of suggestions of how a Russell rework could work. I think Koiri
yeah.
has kind of the idea where he's saying give Russell the Brony range and line of sight. I kind of want a phobie, maybe it's Russell, maybe it's not, to have, I'm going to say a disease cloud or a plague cloud where it's X
Mhm.
number of tiles around it. It's the smiley effect, but instead of having to be adjacent, it could be multiple tiles out kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, and
That's the rework I suggested for Russell.
yeah,
I don't think it'll ever happen, but I really hope this is the last Russell buff we ever see because if this guy keeps getting better, I'm it's just he doesn't need it,
he was,
and I don't
to be
want it.
honest, like before he was ever buffed, I was using him a lot. And it's like, yeah, he's super niche, but in the scenarios where he's good, it is like not unbeatable, but pretty close, it felt like. Because your opponent is
Yeah.
just trapped. And that's a miserable feeling on the other side. Like it's hilarious for me
And
as I'm streaming it and I'm laughing my ass off and chat's going ballistic and it's like, oh my God, Russell, what a game. But believe me, the other person was ready to snap their phone in half. It sucks.
right, it does suck. And I'll tell you too, Russell is, in my opinion, one of the better Akira counters too.
Mm,
He doesn't get used that way often enough, but that's significant poison damage every turn. You already want to kind of run away from Akira,
yeah,
and this fits into that. And the thing about Akira is when you're ready to play Akira, you have a full team that's ready to go.
yeah,
You can't spend keys on a healer to start removing this poison slowly and stuff like that.
yeah.
And Bluelian got nerfed, right? Bluelian was the number one counter to Russell,
Mm-hmm.
and he got decked. Yeah, I just don't want to see this guy get any stronger than he is right now. He's
Yeah,
he's fine. Please keep changing him.
I'm very concerned. Not gonna lie. Collector we talked about earlier. I like this one.
Yeah.
Uh, he's 8 keys, and I think he's probably still underpowered for 8 just by virtue of being a melee. But this is a strong step in the right direction. I'm fine with it.
I wish he were undead. He looks undead, and
Yeah,
the idea
I could
of
say that.
he dazes things so they can't hit him as much, which means
Mm,
he could leech back and sustain himself more.
yeah,
There's like a cool synergy there that I like more than just I'm dimensional, I
it's a
die.
good point.
Um, so it'd be cool, but I doubt that'll happen. That's a dream.
That's a pretty drastic
He's
one. We haven't seen that yet,
yeah
but
yeah we haven't. He's fine. I haven't yet found the situation where I really need to play him.
mm.
I look for situations where I think I can play him,
I
which are
think
pretty
that's
few
a
and far.
fine position for something to be in, where it's like I want to do this, and I'm not paying an enormous opportunity cost to do so. Like there's going to be an opportunity cost of like, yeah, I'm probably just better off playing boss in virtually every scenario, but it's how big is
Right.
that gap? And just like I like collector, it does something cool. I want to use it. Don't punish me, game. Don't punish me for doing something fun.
Yeah. Maybe in a world where Unicorn fell out of the meta
Mm.
somehow or was removed from the game magically. Um, but part of his problem is there if you're playing on a small map, there are traps.
Yeah.
And he's a melee phobie, and you can't afford to risk 8 keys on I might
Yeah,
die to a
oddity
trap.
is not saving you from the traps.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, if that, I think that is a very valid criticism of it, and there's unfortunately at the moment no way to get around it. Whiskers is not solving that problem. Whiskers is just not doing it. So after that, we got Tiny Tim getting, from what I recall, like 25 extra damage, and this was another one in the category of like, I just, honest to God, have no idea why this happened.
This one confuses me more than any other change because Tiny Tim's problem is not damage. His problem is that he can't attack without dying, right? He has 3,200 effective health,
Yeah.
But then if he attacks, he turns into Moly Bully health and he gets deleted in a heartbeat.
He just exists in a space and a role that doesn't need to exist. Like a 6-key panic point grabber. Like,
Yeah.
I have 1 keys that can do that. Like, this is a phobia that I think is kind of like bad sushi. There's no buff, ignoring a potential rework into something completely different. I can't even begin to come up with a buff for this that is relevant. Like, you'd have to add a new ability to it. You'd have to completely change it into something unrelated.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just like,
what I think would
this
be
guy sucks.
cool. I think so. So here's part of it.
Mm.
Part of the issue is he's only good at being a wall.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't play a wall on all these maps when we're in the middle in the thick of things. You can't play a wall and move it to where you need to, right? Like there are tons of matches where you were like, I wish I had a wall here. I wish I had a phobia here to block.
Yeah.
But if you play it ahead of time, you'd never be in that situation, right?
Right.
So one thought I've had that would be really cool, he would need a stat rework on this, would be for him to have 3 movement. And so he's a phobia that like you just pop in the middle of a fight and like, by the way, giant wall that you have to deal with now. And he becomes kind of like a backroom consideration a lot of the time.
I
I
thought you
don't
were going
know.
to say
Maybe I think
Clobster Burrow to like super long range it, but that's putting 2 abilities on a phobia, and I don't think we're going to see that.
yeah. It might be toxic. It might really suck to experience, but I think it would at least let him do his job. But
I think it's one
I've
of those
only ever
jobs that,
seen.
like Hoovy, we probably don't want. Like we don't want it to
Yeah,
be good, because when it is good, like to your point, it's going to be toxic. It's going to be miserable.
I think that's a fair point.
It's like, I
Yeah, I've
can't
only
do
ever
anything
seen.
unless my opponent chooses to let it die. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, so I don't understand the damage buff on it. I don't want it to get a health buff because it is a pain in the butt to kill.
Yeah.
I give it that. It's just that's not worth 6 keys.
Maybe it gets like a health buff, and then like if it's displaced, it loses peekaboo or something like that. But even then, that already reinforces existing phobies that are way powerful. I don't know. I feel like this guy needs a
Yeah.
complete rework to really be reasonable without something being egregiously painful. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what to do about him. I don't like him. I don't like using him, and I don't know what would make me use him.
Yeah, chat saying they've only seen people play it to retake points on small maps without dropping 1 keys, but even then, it's like, I'd rather just play the 1 key.
Yeah, it's
Why would you not just play the 1
it's
key?
better to play the 1 key.
For
Yeah,
like
it
a
is.
ton of reasons. Like, it's just weird. But anyway, I think the last one, yeah, it's the last one, is Zappy. It's got to be the last one. What do you think about this guy?
I was surprised because I felt like Zappy was already doing a lot better, but I guess not
Yeah.
that great to be getting a buff. I don't know what 850 damage is doing. Does that kill anything that matters? Because that's like we've talked before. What matters is damage thresholds, right?
Yeah,
What
breakpoints.
can you kill?
Mm-hmm.
And he could already one shot Inoculus and Repeller, and it's not enough to kill a tractor still.
Yeah, hilariously.
It doesn't change the relationship with any of the things that I bring this out to deal with.
Yeah.
So I'm not like mad that it happened or anything, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, okay. It's like blue. It's the same thing as blue
Yeah.
for me. Like, okay,
I think
sure.
overall,
Do more damage.
this, as well as a bunch of the other changes, may be exactly what, I forget which phobia you'd mentioned it on, but I wonder if these are just stepwise changes that, like, eventually Zappy is now going to do, like, I'm just throwing a number out there, but like 1100 damage with the combination of the
Okay.
electrical. Like, but we're stepping into it to get there over the course of several patches, kind of thing. I'm sure
He's
it won't go
already
that high,
good.
but like, I don't disagree, but I wonder if some of these
Yeah.
changes are along those lines so that we can eventually get to whatever the target destination is. Because otherwise, these singular changes on a number of these phobies are just head scratchers. I don't get it.
Yeah. I guess going to Tiny Tim,
Mhm.
if he did enough damage with a single hit that he could kill something, like if he could one shot a tractor And so his strategy is, hey, I dive my face into your team and you can't kill me because I have too much effective health. I one shot something you care about and then I die. That might work.
It could. I could see that being problematic, not necessarily for a tractor specifically, but like if this thing is doing non-electrical damage, that means it's doing 900 damage, which
Yep.
maybe that's okay because 900 is a huge chunk, but you're probably only you got to burrow in, then you attack, so you only get one attack, but like that could have other issues because now from the other side, it's very much the okay, well, I literally can't kill that thing. It's not possible for
We
me
gotta
to.
keep in mind too.
What was
We
that?
were just talking about ogre. We
Mm-hmm.
were just talking about ogre. Ogre is easy to activate his ability, right?
Mm.
Ogre has 400 more health than this thing. Not thinking about peekaboo
Yeah.
after it attacks, and it has 750 damage and it's ranged. I think like all those things considered together, maybe not so unreasonable. I mean,
Yeah,
it dies.
there's
I
a
don't know.
lot of weird, just in general, there's a lot of weird number relationships now that we've had several patches of things where I think it was much
Hmm.
easier to look at the layout of at this cost and this phobie type and this thing and this ability, this is the damage it does. Or you calculate all those things and say, okay, this is the cost. Now there's a lot of stuff that's kind of all over the place, and I don't quite follow exactly where some of them are supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's all of the balance changes. Let's see if we can run through the new phobies and the new maps. There's way less of each of those. Thoughts on Leshy? Um, well, that's in for another
Wait,
day.
Leshy?
What was that?
Wait, what's it?
Somebody asked about
Oh,
Leshy in
oh.
chat. Um,
Okay, I was gonna say, where's that coming from?
yeah, no, Leshy's for another day. That one probably deserves it. No, it doesn't deserve much of anything. But anyway, uh, so Ace is the first one. I'll be honest, I just don't see why Ace exists. I think it's kind of cool from a stat. So I will say for the patch as a whole, all the new phobies, I love the aesthetic. I love the idea of the
Yeah,
patch, but so many of them seem to have nothing to like. What the hell does Whiskers have to do with the rock band? He was in some of the promo stuff, but like nothing about his ability screams rock band. Ace looks like somebody in Kiss or something. You know what I mean? With like this the spike van braces and stuff like that. And there's a
yeah.
couple other phobies that fit the theme, but just throwing that out there as a general thing. Like a lot of them, they're just phobies, like which is fine.
Well,
But
I was a little bummed because this is like an electrics patch or
yeah,
update. Like we got a lot of electrics,
yeah,
but we didn't get a lot that are actually like generally usable. Because what I've been asking for is give us electric lobber. They gave us Hevo plaid. Okay, 9 keys. Um, but I wanted like a 3 range, maybe like a leap electric. You know, like basically give me
this guy
electrics.
could
I
have
just
had a
need one
leap,
more
but it
electric.
probably like maybe that would do it. Ace with a leap. I don't know.
It would be cool because he'd be like charged up like a volt leap, you know.
Yeah,
But give me electrics that can deal with the mechs that I hate the most, the Sentinels. And if I look through this entire update, I'm not sure if any of this I actually helps us with that.
yeah, I think you're right. Unfortunately, Ace certainly doesn't. Comes out significantly later. It's melee, which is again the biggest problem.
Hmm.
Given the base phobie, like yeah, they're not going to rework Fish Tank to suddenly become a range phobie. Like maybe it does a which Mega Man bad guy was it? Guts Man. I think that like literally shot his fists at you or something like that. There's a bunch of stuff that
Yeah.
has that, like rocket fists. I guess they could do that, but I don't know. I think you were more impressed with Ace than I was. I don't really have much to say about him.
Oh, I wouldn't say impressed is that's egregious.
Yeah,
Let's say I think he's playable. How about that? And I think in your hot take stream you
yeah,
mentioned something like he's redundant, but some redundancy for newer players. You know, I
yes,
could see him being like, hey, you know what? If you're a player who just has all the commons and uncommons and you're a free to play player, Ace is a reasonable counter for you to use against mechs.
yeah.
And
I
that
think that
seems kind of reasonable.
yeah, that sounds like something I said. Like, I think that is reasonable to give newer players or free to play players additional options. It's just, I wish it did a little bit more, even for those people, because then they have something to be a little more excited about. I think even most of those people are gonna be like, "Oh, so it's electric fish tank, great."
One thing I loved about the last update
Mhm.
was Chevelle being an uncommon.
Yeah,
And people can gripe about how it's everywhere, but I think it's
there's
a big
value
part
in
of the
it being
success.
everywhere.
Exactly. It means that everyone had something to be excited about.
Mhm.
And I think it would be wise of the team to pick one phobie per expansion that shifts the meta by adding some kind of new utility, and it's an uncommon, so everyone gets to have something to be excited about. Because the number one thing I see on release day is people getting excited, they drop like $60 or $100 and they don't get anything that they want, and like, oh
Yep.
yeah, that's right, the economy sucks.
Yeah. The
But they forget for a
looming
moment.
specter, the looming specter that
What's
is the
that?
economy, that'll never not be a
Yeah.
problem. I'll never stop screaming about that. So, aside from Ace, we have a rare now, and that's Ash. We mentioned it earlier. Or I forget which one of us said it, but like the existence of Shove Shark and Phantom kind of just completely kneecaps all 8 kneecaps of Ash.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It does. It has utility that Chevelle cannot accomplish.
Yes.
That I really appreciate. Namely, that it's excellent with 2-move phobies that have explosive abilities.
Hmm.
This Ash is for boss what Chevelle is for Hevo 3.0. Because if you shove boss one tile forward, bomb and walk away, you just had one reach and a lot to retreat. And Ash does the opposite. You get 2 movement to walk in, bomb, and then get pulled back. So you get some like extra blast utility and flexibility with how you're approaching things and initiating. There aren't many phobies I think that matters for. The only ones
Right.
that really come to mind are boss, noxious, Subnoxious, of course, and Bogart. That's all I can think of that really wants Ash more than Chevelle.
Yeah. And I think even in those scenarios, you can get, because we talked about it, I forget what the context was earlier, but people will end up using Shove Shark in place of this, even when Ash would be superior, either out of habit, lack of creativity, whatever. Because it's just, well, I've used this for 1,000 games. I know what it can do. I'm not going to screw around
Right.
with Ash, and I think that's what's going to overshadow it. If those phobies did not exist, I think that, like, if Ash came first, if it was Phantom and
Mhm.
Ash, and then we got Shove Shark now, I think people would be way more excited for Shove Shark than they are for Ash in this place, just because it is the more niche phobie.
Yeah. My opinion's a bit down on Ash. When he first got revealed, I thought, oh, people aren't seeing the potential in this thing.
Mm.
I played some frenemy matches against my Frankie, and I used Ash every single time. And in every single match, all I could think was, God, I wish this was Chevelle.
Yeah, I
Like,
I kind of
'cause the
feel
thing
like,
that
oh god, god.
the thing that Chevelle can threaten that Ash cannot
Hmm.
is the double tap.
Yeah,
Ash can't threaten. You can't safely threaten the double tap with Ash, and being able to shove like Bo Mangles forward one tile and have him double attack something is so valuable, and Ash can't do it.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm getting the the Grailian Miss Moffat or Grailian Octonauty vibes from way back when, because a lot of people looked at Grailian and like, well, why would you use this? You already have the
Yep.
ability to do these polls. Well, it has these various edge case scenarios where you can make something happen. And I think that's true here. It's just the way people work, we're just almost never going to see this guy, and we're going to see Shove Shark pretty much every time.
Yeah. In Ash's defense, it has that poison damage, which is
True.
pretty nasty.
Very
But
true.
I think at higher level play, you're usually picking the most efficient tool for the job. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm with you there. Now, Benny was the one that I had mentioned earlier that we kind of diverged a little bit. I
Hmm.
I don't know if I I'm trying to. I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but I don't think I intended it the way it sounded. Like based on people's reactions to what I initially said in my initial hot takes videos and stuff like that, was I was down on it, but I didn't mean to be like, oh, this thing is unplayable. And I think people took it that way. It's just for
Mm.
me, in the role of being a 3-cost turret, so it's obviously directly competing with Stabby, directly competing with Bowmangles, and having lower baseline health to me is an enormous issue because in the other cases, that's the whole point. It's just going to stand there, soak damage, and then live to tell the tale because your opponent
Mhm.
has to commit so many resources to eliminate it. Here, it feels like they have to commit not just significantly less resources, but like it'll be hypothetically trivial to just run a random thing in and kill it, or chip it down and then run a random thing in, and there's way less effort involved in poking it down with like a jar or whatever as compared to the other ones. But that doesn't mean it's going to be unplayable. I kind of need to see it in a game that is reasonable. Like, how difficult is it really to run a 1 key onto this?
Yeah, it's tough to evaluate. It has 25 more damage than Stabby,
Yes.
and it has 250 less health. If it gets to hit time it attacks, it leeches 160.
Mm-hmm.
So if you attack twice with it, you leech 320s, which would be 15, 20 total health, which would be more than Stabby. So
Right.
if this gets to leech back 2 attacks worth of health, it now has been Stabby levels of like endurance, plus the
Right.
resurrect. So I think it all just depends on whether you can pull that off consistently, and I think that'll be a little map dependent. Something someone mentioned is that it could be good droney bait, that you could play Benny. Eventually, Benny dies to like a droney thing. Now you can play Daisy, and you don't have to worry about droney, and that might be worth like dropping a key.
That could be true. I do like that line that you can get because we are, and we talked about this a little bit with the jackalopes. There aren't many worthwhile resurrects that come up in the course of a normal game because it's generally, yeah, they just, okay, I put Daisy on the board, it's going to die to Droney, and I feel dumb.
Yeah.
And I'm not super enthusiastic about the idea of, oh, well, I'm going to use this phobie to set up a later phobie by this one dying, but it does make sense, and Daisy can be powerful enough to maybe not take over a game, but be impactful enough that it could be worth it.
That's how I play Succassin. I use
Mm.
Succassin all the time, and the number one reason I play him is to set up for creep and noxious.
Yeah,
Because you're gonna pop your muffin top to neutralize my Succassin. You think that's a 1 key trade for a 1 key. It is, but you also just lost your best anti-noxious tool in the game.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
now
the muffin's
noxious
way
is
more
going to
valuable.
exactly. Then yeah, exactly. Way more valuable than Succassin. So I think Benny could have an effect like that maybe.
Hmm.
Um, I've used him already and been happy with him.
Okay.
So with he's like level 8 for me, and I've used him in a match against someone like level 11 phobies. Because if I fight someone who's like way lower than me, I try and use newer stuff and balance it out somehow, and
Yeah, that
use
makes
it as an
sense.
opportunity to test things. And yeah, and Benny did well for me. I was pretty happy with it. So I don't have a strong feeling on him, other than I think it's very cool that they added an undead turret for people who like playing undead.
Yeah. So, how long till the monster turret is the next question?
That's Mike. That's microscopic.
Is it? It's not
He's
like,
3 keys.
yeah, but he's not tanky. Like,
He has unicorn health. When was the last time that you thought unicorn had like not enough health and was too
yeah,
fragile?
but it's not on the level. Like, for me, it it does fit the description of a turret to a degree. Yeah, it's a range phobie. It controls space. But when I'm thinking turret, I'm thinking stabby Bowmangles levels of health. Like Benny's pushing it already.
Right.
Is Mike
I'm just
like?
saying.
I feel like we're letting everybody into the turret club now. There's no standards here. There's no
I
standards.
think Gesundheit doesn't belong, okay?
Yeah.
And I think that Mike has been too weak to belong in the past, but I think maybe 950 health might have gotten him there, is what I'm saying.
He's the
I'm gonna play with it. I'm gonna
all
figure it
right.
out.
Well, we got to workshop this one. We gotta come up with the new rules of admittance for this one. Uh, so next up is Omega, which I'll be honest, and I'm sure you felt the same way. Like this is the one that worried me. Yeah, I think this is the one that worried me the most out of the new update before we saw the
I
numbers.
was I was scared, and then I played one match against it, and what I immediately realized, what hit home for me immediately, was this is the end. You get one turn to make it all happen, and then
Mhm.
you've got an 8 key that can't do anything for 4 turns. This thing can't attack.
Yeah, it's an enormous
And
amount of time.
yeah, so this is a phobie that you are only playing if you are absolutely certain that you know what you're doing and how to end the game. I foresee this thing gaining a ton of buffs because the skill am I saying that the skill floor on this thing is so low. You can screw up so bad with this guy.
I think that would be a high skill floor because you're like you have to
I,
you have to have this amount of skill in order to use it properly. Although
yeah,
this is a discussion that's always very silly and nobody ever agrees on what it's supposed to be. I've heard the same discussion on a bunch of other stuff too.
yeah, I think this guy's gonna get a lot of buffs because I think that people are gonna blow it. Over and over again. They're
Yeah,
gonna
if
pull this out and be like, yeah, and they're not gonna understand that you're playing. And this is okay. If you hit two things with this, let's do the math on this real quick. So
yeah.
Gonzo's 4 keys. He buffs something for 250. If you hit two targets with Omega, it's just like having two Gonzos on the board. Literally, they both costed 4 keys. 4 plus 4 is 8.
Mm-hmm.
Except you don't have turret power like Gonzo has. So I think you have to
You also
get
can't do it
three
every
things.
other turn,
Yeah,
which is another significant drawback.
exactly. So I think you have to hit 3 things with Omega and kill a lot of stuff to make it worth its weight. And I think something like 80% of Phobies players lack the basic level of coordination skill necessary to pull that
Mm-hmm.
kind of turn off.
I mean, we see that already with Brony, which is
Right.
obviously does wildly different things, but it's the same sort of premise of, yeah, you got to do this and you got to make it count in a narrow window, and
Yep.
people generally don't do that. Although I want to point out that none of the things that you brought up or I brought up as far as problems for this guy is what I've literally never seen anyone else bring up these problems. They're like, well, what happens if you buff their guys? I'm like, you just kill them.
Yeah,
That's
you
not
just
the
kill
part
them.
you're worried about. You get to
And
attack
do you
first.
know
You
how
just kill them.
yeah, and do you know how easy it is to not buff the enemy team?
That's the
I mean,
other
you
thing
have
to
to
like. The issues that people raised for this thing, like there are problems with it, right? Or potential problems with it. There are issues, hypothetical issues, realistic issues, whatever. They are not the ones that people brought up. People are latching on to problems that are like these are just not a problem. They're not going to come
yeah,
up.
these are things.
It,
I
I,
actually
good.
when it came to Omega,
Yeah.
I had this fantasy that it would be a double-edged sword. I thought Omega was going to buff everything to some absurd damage level, like plus 1,000 damage,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever it buffed died at the end of your turn. That's what
Mm.
I thought that because it's Omega, it's the end, you
That would be
know?
kind
So
of
I
cool.
thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was gonna be some kind of like it's time to go. So when I saw it was 250 only, I was like, oh, I'm not even really worried about this anymore.
The only problem with what you were suggesting is like presumably things would die at the end of. Well, I was going to say like, is the other person's play to just run their guy to the other end of the board or something? But
Well,
there's a
they get
lot
to
of
play.
other ways.
It would die at the end of their turn, so they would
Yeah.
get a 1,000 damage turn too. So of course, like
Mm.
a super huge team fight kind of thing,
Right.
you know. But I think what you're saying is you could use Omega offensively to like dive it into the team and just run. You run to the other side. Omega buffs them, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Omega dies. Yeah.
There's a lot of weird things with where it's like, oh, well, the game ends in the end of the night. The end of my next turn, the game ends. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because there's a lot of ways this can go. But yeah,
Yeah.
Omega, in its current iteration, now that we've seen it, I expect it's going to be in Brony territory, where I imagine Brony has an atrocious win rate, and Omega's probably going to be
Mhm.
worse. but that doesn't mean that it's not powerful. It's just it's going to be powerful only in certain people's hands.
Yeah. Tiny Tim could force Omega to buff it, Dudio says.
I see it, but like I don't. I
Get
I,
those
uh,
double taps from Tiny Tim.
I okay. Yeah, sure. Well,
I,
we'll
I,
go with
I
that.
assume he's joking.
Yeah, I know it's a joke, but I'm just like,
Okay.
all right. Yeah. All right. Next up is Sabian, which I think is one of the coolest ones. And unfortunately, as we mentioned earlier, one of the few that even remotely references music somehow, the symbol of justice.
Yep.
Um, there were a number of people that discovered the company Sabian over the last week or so, which, sure, Google's a thing.
Which what?
The company Sabian makes symbols,
Yeah,
among other.
yeah.
Yeah.
But were you saying, did you know about that beforehand or no?
Well, I knew of them, but like if somebody asked me name a company that makes instruments, I would be incapable of naming it. But like when they posted it, I'm like, yeah, that's a thing.
Okay, I had no idea. I
Oh,
googled Sabian, and the only reference that I was really confused about was Benny. I
yeah.
asked Chu if she could like ask the team like, what is Benny a reference to? Is it Benny Hill? I don't get it.
It's got.
Um,
I feel like it's uh, not with Ozzy. I can't think of who it is, but like I feel like there was a guitarist that it's supposed to be named after, but I can't think of who it is right now. Like they, I'm sure the other names to the point about there being no music references. Like I'm sure Benny, as well as a bunch of the other names, are related to different artists. But
yeah,
if it's just the name, it's not enough for me. I mean, even here with Sabian, it's like technically it's just the name, but at least the flavor text is like, oh, well, here's where it's leading to. Benny
yep.
doesn't get that because he has an ability, which kind of sucks. But it is what it is. But what about Sabian as the actual phobie?
I I was excited because I've wanted a mech flyer
Mhm.
that wasn't one of the droney clonies.
Yeah.
Um, 6 keys. I was really hoping it was 4 keys. There are many situations where I'd like a mid cost.
Yeah.
But this is carry territory. This is klepto cost. What I've been really surprised by is the community just seems to love Sabian. Like
Really?
I people bring up all this Sabian's, oh, I love Sabian. Sabian's doing so great for me.
Hmm.
And it's I haven't seen him in a match personally, and I can't use him for another 6 months because
Yeah.
he's a fighter. You can't use a pure stat phobie with that's understated like that.
Yeah,
So
it's
it'll
just
be a
not gonna
while
go well.
before I really get it. If you see any good matches with him, let me know.
I'm hoping
Um,
because I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. Like I think there's some potential in this guy. I think he's cool. 6 keys is a lot. Like that's not an insignificant investment. 2300
right.
health is a lot. We were talking about that earlier with Flesh Crawler and Motherload, but like
Yep.
I just don't know how often you're really going to connect with more than one thing, and if you're not, this guy is extremely underwhelming. For 2 keys less, you get Blinky, and if you're doing single target damage, it's like all right, it's 50 damage less, but
Yeah, what's the health difference there? Let's see.
I want to say Blinky's 1700, which like we're talking a significant drop off, but the tempo difference I think is the biggest thing.
Yeah, Blinky is 1600 with 450 damage.
16, okay,
So yeah, so I think the stats are there,
yeah,
but it's the tempo issue. And are you even if the stats scale properly,
hmm,
are you going to be able to get 6 keys of value of Sabian? I don't know, but I know it's going to be a heck of a lot harder than getting 6 keys of value with Klepto or Hematic Ginsting.
hmm. I mean,
So
they couldn't
I
have
don't
made
know.
this guy a 3 ranger, like 3 movements. So like
Yeah.
we're at where we like probably the best we could be given the cost and other parameters, but I just don't know if that's a thing that we want.
Yeah, I don't think he's bad or anything.
Hmm.
He just needs time. I don't think he'll ever be like meta stapler or anything, but I think there'll be situations where he'll get pulled out.
Yeah,
Especially just he is the only mech flyer that doesn't die in one hit.
true. Also true. Chat saying
And
his
there are
animation
many.
is fast like Henrietta and the attack looks brutal. Yeah, I do. I think, as always, the art team knocked it out of the park.
Oh, they're so good.
They're undefeated. With the exception of when they had to do, and this isn't, I guess it isn't really the art team, but like when they had to rename the phobies and abilities, like for Frosty. Like
Oh
those were
yeah,
some rare misses, but there's only they're only human.
I'm glad they came around on it.
Yeah, exactly. So Skinwalker, this one's much more interesting with its infinite health and ability. I mentioned it in the hot takes. I wish this thing, I don't know why, other than space, they didn't list the movement. People in chat were pointing out, oh well, it's the same
Oh,
movement, whereas Werewolf changes. But when I first looked at this, I'm like, so Undying Rage locks it in place? That seems bad. And like,
I've seen a few people with that misconception. Yeah,
yeah. And then people corrected me. I'm like, okay, it's obviously better, but I would have liked to. I like having all the information there, but that's a minor thing. Overall, I don't know. I can definitely see roles that this fulfills, including just heart pushing. Be like, all right, I'm gonna walk it
right.
up. You need to stop me because otherwise this guy's going berserk and you literally cannot kill him.
Ethereus played him like every match for a
Mm,
couple weeks and showed off some really great stuff that made me confident that eh, like he's a balanced concept, you
mm.
know, and he has a role in the meta. Um, I really struggle to understand how the same people who made Skinwalker also made Cluck Norris.
Gluck costs 7 too, doesn't he?
He
Does he cost
costs he
7?
costs 6,
Oh, he costs
but it's
6. You're
like
right. You're right.
Cluck buffs himself for effectively. He gets to attack once. He's not
Yeah.
invincible. He just gets to hit hard one time, and then that's it. He's back to being crap. And Skinwalker's like, I'm invincible. I hit AoE. I get an extra 300 damage. I life leech. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
for one key more.
I don't I have no response to that. Like I 100% agree with you. When you put them side by side, it's like somebody missed the assignment here.
It's like two different design philosophies, you know, like
Mhm.
next side by side.
Which
I don't. It's hard to understand, but I think Skinwalker is very cool.
yeah,
Um, he's definitely the most hype phobie of the expansion. I think
absolutely.
we won't. It'll be a long time before we really understand him well because he has to level up, and we have to wait for the exclusive period to end. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, that is part of it, and I agree. I expect once it's there, we will see this guy. It's just going to be a question of how and how often.
I was tempted to buy this guy. That's how cool I think he is.
I'd
But
love to know their sales. They'll never tell us, but like their sales numbers, Cluck Norris, Hoovy, other ones that I can't remember, versus this guy, because this guy had to have sold very well. There's just no way it didn't.
yeah, yep.
He just
And
looks
you know,
too awesome.
and if I could use him, I might have even bought him. But as I mentioned in the feedback thread,
Mhm.
I don't feel like I can spend $100 on a phobie and then I can't use him for 6 months. You know, like
Agreed.
what? Why would I do that? So
It would
if
be
they ever,
I was gonna say it would be extreme for them to, when you buy it, to immediately level it up to like your average phobia level or something, or your highest phobia level. Like, but they got to give you something. It can't just be level 3. It's literally
I think
unplayable.
if you're paying $100 for a phobie, then you should get to use it, and it should be at a usable level. That's how I feel about it. I think
I'm
it
of
should
that
be.
opinion too. It's just a question of what weird things does this do to the in-game economy, and to be honest, I don't care. Like, I just don't care. Like, there's no way that me giving you $100 is gonna, and by me I mean like hypothetically thousands of people give you $100. First of all, great for you. Second of all, if I'm already shelling out $100, can I really be screwing up the economy that bad? It's like, all right, I shoot up in stress levels. Who cares?
Yeah, right.
Like,
There's The only thing I could think of is I wasn't aware of this before. There
Mm,
are some people who buy the exclusive offer and then they want to level up their phobies, so they drop like a couple $100 more on Dreadfuls, hoping to
mm.
get dupes to level up their guy.
I'm sure that goes into the calculation. Like
Yeah,
that's what I would have
but
assumed the original business plan was.
I I I don't know. I'm not good at understanding other people with these things and what their tendencies are, but in my heart of hearts, I feel like giving people a usable phobia would get more money than that current strategy.
Possibly. I mean, it's all hypothetical at that stage of
Yeah.
will that person stick around to then be like, oh, I got this cool thing. Let me get these other cool things to go with my cool thing. I don't know. Like you said, I don't know I don't have the research to speak intelligently on it other than what I know from experience from other games kind of thing.
Yeah, ditto.
But so that's Skinwalker. We got Trivolta, who introduces the another iteration of the dial slash collector ability. This one feels like it has potential. I went kind of on at length, so I won't belabor it here, but it has deceptively more HP than it probably appears because of the ability to turn off actions. It may not be
Yep.
enough, but hypothetically does.
I think it's pretty solid.
Mm.
Also, if, I do. I like phobias that are a bit cheeky,
Mm.
and like one of the when you can taunt someone is pulling out Muffin Top, and just like whistling along before the victory. And Trivolta there too, where doing his little disco dance before you end the match is, I think, one of the most fun ways to finish things up.
This subtle BM.
Yeah, yeah. You walk up, you do a little dance next to their heart, and then finish things. It's just uh, it's really fun and satisfying. So
Yeah.
I love him thematically. I feel old that like no one in the Discord knew that this was a reference to John Travolta.
Yeah, I did wonder how many people would get that. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, this one's easy. Like, this is one of the references. Like, duh, this is who it is.
Yeah,
But then
right.
I took a step back and I'm like, because I didn't realize that nobody knew it until you just said it. But it did cross my mind of I wonder if this is going to go over a ton of people's heads.
Pretty not a single person that I met knew what that was
Oh
about. So
no,
I kept
not
I
like
kept
this.
linking I kept linking the Saturday Night Fever gif of John Travolta doing the motion with his hand out in the
Yeah.
air, and people are like, "That's so crazy! What a coincidence!" I'm like,
What a
no, it's
coincidence. Oh no, not like this. Not
yeah.
like this. Oh my god. I wonder how that makes the devs feel too, because it's like an
Well, it's
obvious
like,
reference, right? Like, I wonder if they care.
well, that's like it's same thing with Cluck Norris, right?
Yeah.
When I told a lot of friends that the Phobies devs did a Cluck Norris reference, they're like, "Oh, that would have been cool 15 years ago." you
Fair, but
know?
at least like people know it, and like I feel like Chuck
Yeah.
Norris things have kind of it's been long enough that it's almost circled around where it's like, ah, yeah, that's kind of cute and it's funny again. Because obviously, like it was hilarious for a little bit, and then people beat it to death, and then it didn't go away for like 10 years. And now I
Right.
think it's been long enough. But this being, I wonder if that also is true. Do you know if people didn't know Cluck Norris in the Phobies Discord when that was released?
People got Cluck Norris.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess
I
that's
don't
a
know what the
more
difference is.
internet thing than John Travolta. Like, even if you weren't
Yeah.
around for that era, you probably are aware of Chuck Norris jokes.
Yeah. And I guess like I don't know what Travolta's been in lately movie wise. He's probably
I
not
couldn't even
in like
tell you.
pop culture really.
Yeah, I'd agree. So unless it's a Grease rerun or something like that, I don't think people know.
Yeah.
What do we got
Missing
next?
out.
Oh, we're finishing strong. Got Whiskers.
Unlike Whiskers, we're finishing strong.
Yeah, I don't know. I have look. It takes a lot to make Doom Doom look good, and Whiskers makes him look like boss.
This is the only phobia that I look at and I just think, what's wrong with these? Why do they do these stats? Every other phobia,
Mhm.
like I can't say if it'll be amazing or not, but I can see the stats are reasonable.
Yeah, it's in the ballpark. This just 850 health? Like,
Yeah,
doesn't
Tickles.
I was about to, yeah, Tickles is exactly what I was gonna say. Doesn't Tickles have 750?
Yes, yes. Tickles has 750.
And
Um,
Tickles, how much damage does Tickles have? It's like 275?
no, it's 200.
Is it only 200? Okay, but even then, like,
Yeah, that's his weakness.
the I think
But you
the
know what?
crazier part is like it's so fragile. Doom Doom at least is kind of tanky. It has anemic damage output, which is in line with this, but it's ranged, which obviously is already infinitely better. But it could go walk on a, excuse me, you could walk up, stand on a trap, hypothetically get back out. There's basically no reality in which Whiskers does that.
Yep. And the thing is, you've got so many other options. I mean, this guy's a rare, and alternatively, you've got the jackalopes. Jackalopes are great trap detonators because they
Yeah.
will survive every time, and you can use it over and over again. And unlike Whiskers, they at least have to sacrifice a one key to go step on it,
Yep.
right? So you get one key back for your jackalope trade. You get nothing for Whiskers. Um,
Yeah.
there's other you can use other trappers to detonate traps, right? Like Venus or Unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these options seem better to me than Whiskers.
He
I
just
don't.
he makes me sad. Like I honestly just feel it's like, geez, this guy. I feel bad for an for a literal non-existent. This thing isn't real, and I just feel sad.
I think part of it's like this must be a lower ELO kind of thing. When I play against people who are like Doomsday 3 or I watch matches, I see
Hmm.
people just run their faces into traps all the time.
Yeah, but like even
And
for those people, it's your reaction is going to be as the trap player, just kill that thing, and then your opponent who wanted to clear the traps like, well, I spent 3 keys to remove one unicorn trap. Why am I doing this?
oh, I agree with you. What I was trying to get at was when oh, I'll switch that. What I was trying to get at was uh, I can't get the thought back. Maybe it'll come back
Sorry,
to me.
I broke it. But yeah, it just, even in those low elo scenarios, it feels like you are. I don't know. I accept the idea because I've even posited on many occasions that yeah, there are some phobies that are bad. And they're bad because they're intended for low elo scenarios, low collection levels, low skill level, low experience level. I always follow low skill with low experience because I don't want people to feel insulted. But realistically, look, if you're new at the game, you're bad. And that's not
Yeah.
trying to be negative. It's just reality. You haven't learned everything because there's a lot to learn. We've all been there.
It takes months to even know all the things that you could be fighting against.
Exactly. So I hope people aren't getting offended by it. But there are phobies that, pterodactyl was the earlier example. That is intended, I think, for lower elo stuff where, okay, that guy's a monster. And you mentioned Smiley and other people brought up Cerberus on many occasions. I don't think this guy does anything even at that level because he's just going to go in and die. And your opponent, it's like, all right, I'm losing keys differently is what it boils down to. And I don't think that this is leading you into a different strategic growth pattern of, oh, well, if I send in the appropriate phobie to clear the trap, I won't blow up my whole team. Well, this guy is literally supposed to be the anti-trap guy, and he sucks at it. So what are we teaching them? To hide and run away from the traps? They could do that anyway. I don't know. I don't know what this guy's supposed to do.
I can only see buffs in Whiskers' future.
I hope so. I hope so. There's a lot of things that people have suggested over time for buffing, well, Neophobe or whatever it's called for Doom Doom. You know, like they gain health or they'll get a shield or they'll detonate it somewhere else or like any of 1,000 ideas. And like, yeah, Whiskers needs a lot of help. There's really
I will say, like, I used Doom Doom a couple times in the Dimensionals event, and while I don't think he's like amazing, I don't think he's quite as bad as he gets a reputation for. It's just that here's it's like this. Trap detection isn't that great
Yeah.
because I already know where the traps are because I'm paying attention. And there are only so many spots that your traps could be. Based on where you're standing, it's obvious. You need trap detection when you've lost track, or there are so many keys they've invested on trappers, like it did Fire Ant plus Unicorn, for example.
Yeah.
That's a lot to
Yeah, it's
keep
a
track
gazillion
of.
traps.
Right. So I think that like people try and bring I've seen people bring Doom out against like Unicorn and stuff like that, and you don't need that
Correct.
against Unicorn.
I
And then
think
they
against
think he's
Fire Ant
bad.
it's reasonable, but
Even Fire Ant, most of the time, I'd rather not. For me, it has to be they have to invest two trappers. They got two
mm,
trappers on the board, or if I lost track of things, I'll bring out Doom. But otherwise, I can keep track of the traps well enough.
right.
Um, Whiskers, I guess there could be like end game scenarios where you need to be doing things, and the fear of those traps is the only thing preventing you from doing them. And I guess the one thing that Whiskers has going for him is
Mm.
you don't have to spend 5 keys on Doom anymore. You could like
Uh,
I don't think Whiskers is worth 3 keys,
yeah.
but he's giving you 2 keys to spend on something else.
I feel like I'd still rather get Doom. So, like, the reason I bring up Fire Ant is because there are scenarios where I have to deal with that trap, but by virtue of how Fire Ant's trap functions, if I send a 1 key in there, it's probably doing the thing that my opponent wanted anyway, even if I don't
Right.
take extra damage. So the ability to absorb the traps, and I'm assuming in this case that like Tickles was already used. Um, so Doom here, the extra 2 keys buys you so much more HP that your opponent hypothetically has to actually spend some effort to kill it. And thereby maybe you can
Right.
make something happen, especially if like another trap goes off or whatever. Whiskers is just like, I'm gonna kill this thing by accident. So, all right, you got 1 trap and you incinerated 3. Like, I would trade if I could have every one of my traps eat 3 keys of my opponents every time they went off. I would do that all day.
Absolutely.
So, like, I just Whiskers just seems bad. I don't know.
Yeah. I can't see him being I can't see him ever getting use.
Nope.
Which is a bummer because I was actually the most excited for
Yeah,
him
I was
when
really
I saw
excited.
him.
And he looks cool. He looks great, but womp womp. So the last piece, which we can try and do as quickly as we can, I guess, is the maps. All right. So Toys in the Attic is actually the first one. So obviously we have a big thumbs down from you, Cars. Tell us why.
Not just me, the whole community. I mean, 54, 55 upvotes in the Discord, all saying we don't like this map.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why. One reason, there's poison tiles everywhere. And having so many maps where you just have to play mechs isn't fun. It is not fun being locked out of 3/4 of my collection
Yeah,
to play a map. And that also means that this map becomes a collection check, which I think is fundamentally bad design.
I agree with that.
That it sucks when you're a new player and you only have 2 or 3 mechs. So what? Like, let's say you have Stabby, for example, instead of Bow. Okay, that just sucks now. It sucks that you play Stabby on a map that is really going to make you suffer for having Stabby instead of Bow. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's there's one contestable panic point. You cannot pressure the second panic point. Any map where the maximum damage you have to worry about to your heart every turn is 200 or 235 depending on the league you're in is a map that is a stall map, and that means that everyone plays the same way. You're all forming the Justice League. You know, you're making your superhero team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People are still figuring out what that super team is for this map, but again, it's a collection check. Some people have Zappy. If you have Zappy on this map, congratulate, and your opponent doesn't, and they don't have like any kind of amazing mechs, congratulations, you win. You have
Yeah.
Zappy. Zappy absolutely destroys on this map. Blasto is really good. The one that I love the most, right now so far is Frosty,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's hard. It's easy to catch people on the beams.
Mhm.
Um, Hevo Plaid is ridiculous on this map because
Yeah,
he
I can see
can
that.
zip up. He can zip up to the top conveyor belt. For if you're player one, you can go to the top conveyor belt, bomb their team, and the conveyor moves you out.
Yeah,
He
that
can
seems pretty
also
bonkers.
double move. He can also double move to that bottom right corner and sit on that stim pad and AoE bomb the heart over and over again.
I would
So
Yeah, there's a lot of rough spots. I was somewhat optimistic early, mostly because the panic or the stims rather don't cover the center panic point as we saw
yeah,
in a lot of it, which seems to be an improvement, but the collection check issue is a problem. I don't inherently have a problem with these maps for certain archetypes, aka okay, these are mech maps, this and like locker room funk and stuff like that. I think my biggest issue though is we nothing exists to make it a not mech map. There's literally
right.
nothing in the game that says don't play mechs here. So
I mean,
every map is
there's
a mech map.
something. So if you look at Chapeltown real quick, I
Yeah.
think one thing that's cool at Chapeltown is the poison layout is such that they have that healing spawn in the corner, and if you look at it
Mm,
from any poison tile on your side of the map, pretty much, except for the ones in the very bottom, you can double move, hit that conveyor belt, and remove the poison.
right.
So what they did was they turned these poison tiles into a risk reward thing where you can dive, get poisoned, now you can sacrifice tempo and position to remove it. And I think that's a really creative and interesting way to use it.
I think that's a good point.
And there's a difference here because what does the poison do here? It locks. It's kind of like a scopoceum where you have like the ring. It's a loose ring formed around, and you're
Right.
locked in the middle where you have to fight. Toys in the Attic locks the middle out. It prevents conflict instead of encouraging it. And the other thing is, if you look at that bottom right poison tile,
Hmm.
you cannot get from that poison tile back to the healing spawn one turn. It takes 2 turns.
Hmm.
So, and that's where you have to be if you want to attack that panic point on the far side. If you want like a Bowmangles there or something like that. It's the stim pad in the corner is a cool idea that I like on paper. In practice, it gets negated by the conveyor tile to the left of it that points toward the abyss tile.
Yeah.
You can't actually pressure that stim pad because anything you put there to attack the stim pad gets pushed into the abyss. So it ends up being, if you can get back there, the only time you can get back there is when you do a late game coordinated push with a team. Like if you have like Hevo 2.0 plus you have I'm doing Hevo 2.0 plus Frosty as my big hitters,
Hmm.
and you can use like Hevo 2.0 to blast them back, then double move with Frosty into the corner, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff you can do, but that's 16 keys. That's not a tempo play. And again, that's my collection. I have a good collection where I have Hevo 2.0 and Frosty to abuse that. Most people, I've watched every match I can, and some of All Fears 3 players I have watched for this map, and they all play out exactly the same way, with both players huddling on their sides, and eventually someone just kind of like loses the will to fight and decides to attack.
Yeah.
Um,
The best play is to not play, and that's a bad sign.
yes, hashtag war games.
Yeah. it's
Um,
it's tough, and I agree. I wouldn't hate this map if there were other alternatives, maybe even ones that are as extreme but in a different direction. Where it's like, oh, well, this map is this play pattern, and this map is this play pattern, and this map is this play pattern. But
yeah.
this is a very linear play pattern, and
Yep.
it's been seen in other
Mhm.
instances. And as far as unless there's something coming in the next update for Phobies, like new Phobies that somehow rearrange this, there's nothing changing here.
It's so close to being a really cool and interesting map it
Mm,
does have a lot going on it. Like it's the layout's really creative.
yeah.
You know, I think that's good. If you could take that panic point, the far panic points, and swap them with the poison tiles that are between the conveyor belts, I think this could be a pretty decent map. It would be even cooler if the conveyor belts like led up into the enemy heart, so you're like pushing into each other's side continually there. I don't know. I don't understand the point of the conveyor tile that goes into the abyss point.
I've already seen people
I've
die to
only
it, so
Well, I know. Sorry, I understand it can be utilized that way. Not that it's useless, but in terms of making that interesting, it just locks out more of the map, is what I mean.
yeah.
It's a
No,
part of
I'm
it
with you.
for that reason. For the reason you just mentioned, you can't put stuff there,
Yeah.
and that means that you can't put stuff by the conveyor belt. You can't put stuff in the middle by the poison tiles unless you're using mechs. So just this is a map where you just can't do a whole lot because so much of it's locked out. And there's
Yeah.
a healing spot. So even if you get a small advantage, well, it's really hard to push in and they're going to go back and heal anyway and recover everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, a lot of things on this map that leave much to be desired.
I
Any
hate
quick
this thing.
thoughts on Musomiya, or however you say this map?
Oh, this is so cool. So usually we have maps where all the panic points are in the middle-ish, and then the hearts are off on the side, and they flipped it, right? The
Yeah.
hearts are in the middle and the panic points are off the side. I think that's really cool. I've
Yeah.
only had fun matches here so far, and I think that so long as that continues to pan out, I feel like this is a new archetype of map they could build on.
This is something that you kind of hit the nail on the head. The putting the hearts into an exposed, attainable position is something that's missing on a huge swath of maps. And it's something
Yeah,
that I think both of us have brought up on many occasions in the past that
many.
this is one of the this is one of the win conditions. Yes, panic points are doing the same thing, but like this is a way more exciting way to do it. Like I would way rather have like, oh, I have to split my army so I can race on this side, or I have to defend, or we have to engage, or I need to do this to pull them away than it is, oh, well, I'm gonna just hold one more panic point than them for 40 turns. Nobody, well,
Yeah.
not nobody, but most people don't want that. So I think the more that we see like this, as long as, like you said, they continue to pan out, this is way better. So I
That's
have
what's so
high
weird
hopes
about
for
it.
this map.
It's almost like there are two design philosophies, one for large maps and one for small maps.
Mhm.
And it's like large maps, hearts vulnerable, lots of panic points, interesting features. Small maps, let's give them one panic point to fight on and hide the hearts. And I don't understand because no one likes that.
I think the assumption is that a small map inherently forces more interaction because you can't hide on one end of the map. Your opponent is like 2 steps away,
Mhm.
maybe
You
literally
can
one
in
move in
Toys in
an
the
attack.
Attic.
Yeah. But then I think that's what leads them to adding a lot of these other things. That it's like, oh, well, we need something to help break it up so you could be more defensive. But it exacerbates the problem because people do that anyway. I don't know. I can kind of see the logic of how some of these things happen, but that doesn't mean that they're any better. What about Dark
Yeah.
Sarcasm? I haven't seen anything on this map because I haven't been able to since it just rotated in.
Oh, so I just did a bunch of frenemies matches on it today
Mhm.
with Dudio Bugtron. He helped me out, and uh, I don't think it's like a terrible map. It's not a good one either. It feels pretty slow. I think the main issue is that safe panic point. You can only access it by having a lobber on the other side, and
Mm.
then you also need a one key that can double move onto their conveyor tile to recap it. And those two things combined really limit your options. This is this
Yeah.
is this is just weird to me, I think, because I look at like Musumiya and it's so big and open, and then I feel like we keep getting these small maps where they're just walls everywhere.
This
And
feels like another
walls are
Gravedigger
best.
map. Like they
That's
every map,
well, and
every small map
strangely,
lately feels like use Gravedigger a million times.
which is why I'm gonna plug for myself here. I made this suggestion for a new phobia called Scrub,
Hmm.
that would be an eraser, and his ability is called For Big Mistakes, and he erases one wall on the map and then dies. So he's like a muffin top that removes walls.
Interesting. Okay.
And the idea would just be that it would be a tool for maps where you just really need one wall gone, and it would increase meta diversity because everyone wouldn't be having to play Gravedigger all the time. And it would speed up matches because instead of playing 3 keys to remove your wall and move the match along, you could play 1 key to move the match along and start engaging. I think it would be good for the game and its meta if we had that phobie. And Dark Sarcasm is a perfect example. Um, I tried several openings on here. One opening I tried was playing Maggie up to the top by that panic point to prevent it from being safely capped. I didn't really dig it. I tried Spud first to deny it. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter because Spud can't kill Tickles.
Fair.
Spud kind of sucks in my opinion. Um, I did Unbearable up top, and I thought that was really solid because it's very hard to dislodge Unbearable when he's sitting so far into your side,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can hammer that panic point and move keys up there to recap. That seemed to give good pressure. And then the last opening that I tried that I thought was, oh, I also tried a halfy ending that was horrible. And I lost against I think it's when I lost against Jeremy. No, that was the Spud opening. I lost against Jeremy with the Spud opening. That was
Mm.
terrible. Um, the other one that's really good is turn one Gravedigger. And what you do is you put Gravedigger, you double move him to the spot right above that panic point. And now check out all your options. You can cap the center and wall them out. You can
Mm.
also break the very top wall, which now means you have a clear lane to their panic point, so you can move a turret in and start contesting that.
Interesting.
Are you seeing what I'm saying?
Yeah. Interesting.
So I really liked the Unbearable opening and the Gravedigger opening about equally. I plan exploring those more. But my opinion on this map is I think it would be amazing if it just didn't have that top and bottom wall.
Yeah. It kind of comes down to, like, as I was listening to your idea for the new phobie, all I could think was, or we could design maps with a little bit better. Which is not to say like it's a bad idea, but it feels like that's a
Yeah.
crutch. And it's like, oh, well,
Yeah,
this is a get out of jail free on oops, we put too many walls.
well, the developers have not expressed any interest in reworking maps, and so
Yeah.
what's that mean? Modern problems require modern
Yeah.
solutions, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wish Droney had 5 more health. Right now,
Mm.
Droney has 420 health. That's the same damage that Snowball does. If he had 425, then he could survive Snowball, and you could do Droney openers on maps like these to cap the center right away
Mm.
and get more value over that as the match goes on. And I really wish they would just give him 5 more health so he could be a valid opener option.
It's not, I mean, it's an interesting idea. But, so we'll move on to another one, Bites the Dust. There was somebody in chat that had asked, I just started playing this like a week ago. Do you think they will ever come out with a 2v2 mode? No, and I also think it would be bad for the game if they did. Now, Cars, we don't have to get into this one. What was the chess mode that you had suggested before?
Bug House.
Bug House. If you're not familiar with that, Father Has No Name, check that out because I think that is a viable way to do a 2v2 in Phobies. But otherwise, and we've talked about this at length, and I could maybe hang out after we're done recording and explain, but like, I wouldn't say it would kill the game, but it would probably kill the game. That's kind of the most succinct way to put it. But so Cars, another one, Bites the Dust, or as you put it, the twice lore.
Yep, the twice lore. That was my initial take, and then we saw that the map. Then I noticed the map. At first, I thought that was symmetrical. The first picture they showed had the top row cut off, and so I thought that was it. But then I noticed that the panic
Oh.
points weren't symmetrical,
Mm,
and I figured, oh, there must be another row up there that has another panic point. So this map has
right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panic points. The one store's main problem is it has 5, and of those 5, only 1 is contestable. Of these 7, almost most of them are. I would say like 6 out of the 7 are contestable. Really,
Mm-hmm.
I did a match against Jeremy here, level 1 frenemies, and I think he'll agree with me. It was just pure chaos the entire time. There was at one point I had 4 1 keys out, and I was just running around
That's
capturing panic
wild.
points, trying to catch up with him while he was doing the same thing. Um, this map has crazy high tempo. I think at a glance, I could eat my words, and it could in fact just be the twice lure because I was wrong on the once lure.
Yeah.
Um, but my initial feeling on this was that you can go so fast on this map and you can pressure things. It's also a great map to use Gesundheit or microscopic on because you can double move them to that abyss tile that covers that those two middle panic points on the extremities,
Hmm.
and they're super safe there. And so you can pop one there and then keep running 1 keys into those two middle panic points while you're fighting the center to get more heart damage. Um, Furmaid says Repeller and Attractor definitely dominate here. I would say
Repeller,
they're
I would
slow.
say less so, but I think Attractor is going to be an issue. This could be a map where the Attractor nerf matters because you're not likely to, like, you're going to get pulls and you're going to fling things into the abyss, but you're not going to get like your opponent's entire team. Just the way the map is, you can't cluster, most likely. So we'll have to
Jeremy
see.
and I's match was fast enough that the most expensive thing he played was a single 6 key. Everything
Mm.
else was cheaper than that. And the most expensive thing I played was a single 7 key, and everything was cheaper than that. This is unless player one decides to turtle. Who knows what happens if player one doesn't understand tempo? This is not going to be like an Akira map where everyone's sitting around. There's too many panic points to capture and deal with.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. It is in the map pool for Monster of the Week tomorrow. By the time this goes live on YouTube, it will
Oh,
have already happened. So I'm very anxious to see how many people pick this map. I've been intentionally forcing every single new map, and I'm just hoping people don't pick Toys in the Attic. But
I am going to. You'll have to give me your player list so I
yeah,
can DM them and just have a talk and encourage them to play this. Especially, I would really like to see Alien Engineer play on this map because I know that, like me, he's a very aggressive player,
mm.
and I think he will. I think he'll just destroy on this map.
Well, you can
So,
opt into
nope.
the spectator role, so you can see everything that's going on in the events in there. So like
Yeah,
it won't add
usually
you to the event, but that way you can see like all the people that are in there and what the matchups are.
I usually end up watching the replays later as I go through the player lists
Mhm.
in the evening. When the tournament's happening, it's usually Saturday family time, so
Yeah,
I'm
that's
hanging out
fair.
with everyone.
That's fair.
But I pretty much it's actually funny because usually I watch your like tournaments and your reviews and
Mm.
stuff like that, and a lot of the time as I'm watching matches, I'm like, oh, I've already seen this one.
Fair, fair. Father has no name, so when you play, there are no decks, right? Even if you have all the cards correct, you have 100% access in Phobies to your entire collection every game. So you'll never have it. Oh, I didn't draw my X. If you want to play it in a game, you can do it. You can force it. Whether
And
it's a good
also,
idea or not is another story.
my favorite thing about there being no decks and phobies is that in card games, you want to tune your deck for what you're going to play against, right? And I always run into this experience where I'll be like, okay, I want like 4 of this guy so I can handle this matchup. Well, then I stop getting that matchup, so I reduce it to 2 maybe, just in case. Then I never draw it, and I go through this like endless cycle of
Yeah,
trying to make my deck so that it's consistent, and it never happens. And with phobies, I never had that frustration.
exactly.
Yes, it does get crazy scrolling through all of them. I would like more filter options. A father has no name. I am getting to the point where it's hard for me to enjoy and play Arena because I have 161 phobies, and I spend most of my turns scrolling through my options thinking about what to
Yeah, the
play.
favorites thing is not enough. They need other options where it's. I mean, sometimes it's even difficult to just recall. Oh, in this scenario, I want this because there's
Yeah.
just not enough time. And it's like, oh, by the time I realize what it was, all right, I've already got to commit to the worse option or the lesser option because there isn't time to undo everything when I realize, oh, this could have been better. But
Yep. And which is why I think if you look at Arena matches,
mm,
people who play Arena tend to kind of what's the word I'm looking for when you just go with the same thing over and over again.
I don't know if you want me to
Autopilot.
say meta or yeah, you do
No, no,
autopilot.
no.
Autopilot is correct. I think
Yeah,
that is
they
true.
autopilot, and like they'll choose bad options even in when situations they'll choose their usual option even when it's bad and doesn't make sense. And I don't blame them
Yeah.
because the timer is scary, but it's something that happens, and it's something that I've been feeling more in the last couple months. I've been feeling more and more where I just like can't make decisions on what to use, and I would love to see the quest rework just so I can go back to playing async as my main mode
Mm.
because I find scrolling through my collection on that timer to be exhausting right now.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. The last thing on the list is Chapeltown before we close up shop. You had mentioned a few things about this earlier, Karst, but what do you think the potential is for this one?
Super solid. I haven't had a bad experience here yet. Uh, I think this is just a really nice map. Like it's not there's nothing revolutionary about it, I don't
Mm.
think, and there's nothing really controversial about it. It's just solid. You've got 6 panic points. They're well spread out. The hearts are exposed enough that I've seen many matches where people go after them and attack.
Yep.
The poison tiles I think are used well, in that you could use. I've played matches here where I don't use a single mech, and I feel just fine about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that poison tiles should be. They should be strategic, not forcing you to spam mechs like
Yeah.
on Toys in the Attic.
It
If I play on
influences
a
but does not cripple your options.
exactly. There's some advantage to playing mechs, but if you don't want to play mechs, you're still gonna do just fine.
Yeah.
So I think this map, they again, the large maps just look great to me, and I don't understand what happened with the small maps and why we keep getting these one panic point maps.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some design rules about how they want them to go, but
And
that's yeah.
we have like the floor is lava has 6, you
Hmm.
know?
But people
And
hate
they're
that map.
all some people do.
A lot of
People
people do. Like it every time for a long time. I mean, I haven't checked recently. I don't know if anyone's done a poll of the community, but like for a long time, it was this is the worst map in the game. Oh my god, why did they even create this? Blah blah blah. Everyone cringed to roll up on that map. Whether that's
when I
still true,
talk
I
to
don't
people
know.
though,
What was that?
when I talk to people, it's when I talk to people,
Mm,
the complaint I hear with the floor is lava is not about the 6 panic points though. It's the lava tiles in the center that divide the sides.
mm,
And it's if your heart rush fails as player one, it's easy to get into a situation where neither of you. It's like a Agora. Like
mm.
Agora had this situation where you didn't want to be the one to attack because then you're standing on the lava.
Yeah.
So your opponent attacks. Well, they don't want to stand in the lava either. And the Flora's lava has that issue. Um, Ironically, the way to make the Flora's lava better is to remove all of the lava. And it would be in my opinion, like an ideal small map.
Yeah.
But there's also like Detention has 4, Pluto has 4, Big House has 5. There's lots. And I just don't understand like what's the obsession with giving us. We've got like what have we gotten recently? We've gotten these 2 maps that we just went over. We got Center Stage, which is one of just mind-bogglingly bad, right? It's a map where you can't even fight over a panic point unless you play Gravedigger or Crushmore. So, like, what's the motivation there to take one of the most commonly used phobies in the game and force everyone to use it every match? That's not fun.
That's what it kind of
To
feels
have
like
to,
with a lot of these recent small maps, but
yeah. And I
it
love
is what it
Gravedigger.
is.
He's almost always in my MVPs, and he is my profile picture in the Phobies game. He is my favorite phobie,
Mm,
but I don't want to use him because the map is so bad that I have to use him. I want
yeah.
to use him because he's awesome.
Getting railroaded into it is a different story than it being a choice. You can use
Yep.
something every game, but if I'm forced to use it every game, those have way too wildly different feels.
Yep.
But of course, that's the very long episode 2. We went a little bit over, but there was a lot to talk about. We'll probably circle back to the maps and other things as we move forward. But any other closing thoughts, shout outs, or where can people find you, that sort of thing, as we close up shop?
Find me on the Phobies Discord. Go into the options for the game, dig through the menus, and find the link. Come say hi to everyone in the Discord.
Yep.
I feel sad because if you go to like the Phobies Reddit subreddit, for example, there aren't a lot of posts there, and people will ask like, "Is this game dead?" And the game is very alive. It has a very solid community. We're just all in the Discord. So
Yeah,
come say hi to us in the Phobies Discord. There's a
very
lot
true.
of us loving this game.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about it earlier, but sometimes people can get siloed in whatever their social media of choice is and don't necessarily realize that there are other options. I hope going forward, the Phobies team will put more present notifications, we'll say, in client to say, hey, did you know you can also do this? Maybe, like you said earlier, attach a minor quest to it, something like that to incentivize it. I think that would do a lot. But yeah, that's going to do it for this time. I appreciate everybody that was hanging out, chat being lively as usual. Everybody out there in YouTube land, hit us up in Discord or in the comments. Let us know what you want to see for future episodes. Come by the live stream, link for that down in the description, likes and subscribes, blah, blah, blah. But if you're interested in asking questions either live or when we do mailbag stuff, let us know in Discord. We'll see what we can get cooked up for the next one. That's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Tune in next time for more Random's Thoughts.